call this meeting to order, the regular meeting of the Ponca City Board of Education for Monday, September 11th at 6 p.m. And we'll start out with a flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing and join me in a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we gather together this evening seeking guidance, wisdom, and support. Be with us in our deliberations and help us to be wise in the decisions we make for the good of all those who have placed their trust and confidence in our leadership. On this day of solemn remembrance of the 9/11 tragedy, may we honor the lives that were lost in this tragic act. May we give thanks for those who served and saved, rendered aid, and assisted. May we give comfort to those who live with loss. May we seek justice and peace where it is within our ability and rely on you when the ability escapes us. May we build what has been torn down. May we mend what has been broken. And may we live your love when hate seems to reign. May we bear witness to the cause of peace. Amen.
Roll call, please. Mr. Newsom?
Here.
Mr. Riley?
Here.
Mrs. Rowland? Present. Mrs. Booth? Present. Mrs. Zimshin? Here.
Oh, we're moving on to item number 2, which is public comments. And we do have some folks signed up tonight, so I'm just going to go ahead and read through the section of the agenda that just explains the comments from the public. The Ponca City Public Schools Board of Education recognizes the value to certain school governance of public comment on educational issues and the importance of involving members of the public in board meetings. The board has established guidelines to govern public participation in board meetings necessary to conduct its meetings and to maintain order. After checking in with the board clerk, individuals or groups wishing to speak during the public comment period must provide the following information in writing in order to speak before the board: name and address of the individual, the agenda action items the individual wishes to address, and the organization the individual represents or is affiliated with, if applicable. Anyone who would like to speak to the board during public comment period of the meeting must check in with the board clerk at least 15 minutes prior to the start of the board meeting. There will be a form available they will need to fill out and return to the board clerk before they can be heard by the board. Participants must be recognized by the president or other presiding officer and must preface their comments by an announcement of their name and group affiliation, if applicable. Comments of the speaker must relate to an item on the meeting agenda. Generally, participants shall be limited to comment of maximum of 3 minutes duration unless altered by the presiding officer with the approval of the board. All public comments during any one regular meeting shall be limited to no more than 15 minutes. No participant may speak more than once during a single meeting. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No participant may address or question the board members individually. For more information regarding speaking privileges of the public, please refer to the board policy, which is available on our website or in the manual located here. So, Lori.
Our first speaker is Mr. Dave White. He would like to address the agenda item 9E, supernumerary.
Thank you, Mr. White. You'll have 3 minutes, and if you could please tell us your name and group affiliation if applicable.
I'm Dave White, and I'm speaking as an individual whose children and some of my grandchildren attended Ponca City School. About agenda item 8.9.E, purchase of super noodle for SEL. I hope that you consider the burden that implementing SEL adds to the teachers, and that it will take time from teaching basic subjects. SEL is said to be a tool to improve learning. After I looked at a lot of SEL websites, including those of Castle and Noodle, it appears to me that SEL is a clever way to enable teaching DEI without being transparent about it. So I hope that you will vote no on agenda 8.9.E, super noodle. About the proposed gender policy changes, item number 5. Gender policy in schools is a very controversial issue nationally, as well as in, I think, in Ponca City. The community, if the community was really aware of what is being proposed, there would be a lot more attendance tonight than we see here. I hope that after discussion, you'll table this policy to allow more time for reflection and discussion. There are probably very, very few for who gender is really an issue. Accommodation and ignoring objective facts, in effect, two sexes determined at birth, fixed at birth, only encourages immature children to follow this silly fad. I don't think that such accommodating policies are what most of the public wants. That concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Point of order. Point of order, did Mr. White include that in the agenda item?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
missed that.
I missed it, but he did include it.
All right, and the next speaker?
Our next speaker is Mr. Gary Volkers, and he would like to speak to the item 9.E superintendent.
Mr. Volkers, you're welcome to the microphone, and please, you have 3 minutes, and if you give us your name and group affiliation, if applicable.
My name is Gary Volkers. I'm from here in Ponca City. I would like to speak concerning the purchase of licenses for the Supernoodle SEL curriculum software, and at the same time offer a response to public comment made in support of SEL at the August 14 board meeting. The speaker then pointed out that as an employer, he looks for employees with coping skills, creativity, passion, curiosity, confidence, have an ability to form connections, collaborate, and make good choices. We were told that these were the very things that Supernoodle social emotional learning curriculum provides. Based on those claims, it looks like something everyone would want. But I have some questions. Does the program really deliver what it promises? And do we really want what it delivers? Are there important character traits that are missing, or perhaps even conflicting with what SEL promotes? What about concerns for doing what is right? What about a concern for the truth? What about integrity, diligence, and hard work? But even in those areas that it promises, do we really know what it intends to deliver? It makes a difference how those terms are defined. We were told that Supernoodle enables making good choices, but what do we know about how the program determines what are good choices? Are good choices the ones based on the unchanging principles of the Word of God, or are they based on the ever-changing principles of Marxism and secular humanism? Actually, the Supernoodle website doesn't even use the term good choices. It was the speaker last month that used that term. Supernoodle uses the term responsible choices. We should ask, responsible to whom or to what? The UN, the WHO, Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates? Do we know? Shouldn't it be primarily responsibility to God? Karen Nemi, President and CEO of CASEL, says on the CASEL.org website in a workshop titled SEL as a lever for equity and social justice that, quote, they see SEL as a tool for anti-racism, and CASEL has prioritized issues of equity in the center of our work for a long time, end quote. Equity, as currently redefined by Marxists, is not the same as equality. Equality means treating people the same. Equity, by contrast, means treating some people better than others, depending on the level of oppression they can claim for themselves or their ancestors, or unrelated people with the same skin color or other characteristics. Do employers want all employees to expect the same pay and benefits regardless of how hard they work, or the quality of their work, or the type of work? That is the question I would ask the speaker from last month. We want to encourage either students or employees to have a strong sense of entitlement. That's what we get from equity in DEI and SEL. I believe we're looking at a Trojan horse with DEI and SEL initiatives that are based on and promote a Marxist worldview. For the good of the children for whom you are responsible and our society, I strongly recommend you not purchase the license for Supernoodle and remove all SEL from the schools. Thank you.
Our next comment will be from Mr. John O'Neill, and he would like to address the 9.E quote from Cody.
All right, Mr. O'Neill, you may come to the microphone, and if you would please give 3 minutes, and please state your name and group affiliation if applicable.
John O'Neill, here speaking as an individual on the 8.9.E quote for Go Noodle. So, again, John O'Neill, 1990 graduate of Poe High. I spoke last month. My wife, Mary Ann, and I have a son who graduated from Poe High this past May, and a daughter and son currently attending Poe High. I spoke at last month's Board of Education meeting and for my support for PCPS to purchase the Super Noodle SEL curriculum from Go Noodle, and how the 8 core competencies of the program align so well with the intangibles of successful people, of future successful people. Just to review: connection, choices, coping skills, creativity, compassion, curiosity, confidence, collaborate. I spoke a bit about my work history and how I've witnessed how each of these skills contributed to make myself and coworkers successful. In the last month, I've spoken with other parents about the SEL program, how it will be used at PCPS. No one has voiced concerns about these skills being taught at PCPS. Actually, everyone felt more time should be spent on these 8 skills with elementary kids. We ask teachers to do so much in a day, but this tool provides important skills to introduce and reinforce in elementary kids. Mary Ann and I are raising 3 teenagers. We are raising strong, independent, driven children using these 8 skills along with empathy and self-awareness in a safe and nurturing home. We discuss goal setting and the work it will take to reach those goals. We've discussed with our kids that not all of your classmates come from homes like ours, but all of your classmates deserve to be treated just like you. Be understanding of your classmates' struggles. Always treat every classmate with respect. Whether children are raised in a comfortable, nurturing environment or not, all children should learn the 8 core competencies of this program. All students need to be treated with kindness and respect and given the support to succeed. It is appropriate for PCPS to provide a tool such as Go Noodle SEL curriculum to allow all kids the opportunity to learn how to calm their nervous system so they can cope with the external environment and continue to learn. This is the basis for all learning to occur. The kids must feel calm and safe to succeed in school and learn. We see nothing controversial or concerning about using these skills to raise our children. We see nothing controversial or concerning about Go Noodle's SEL program. I believe last month it was stated this program is being requested as a tool for the teachers by the elementary curriculum director and all elementary school principals. These are the individuals Ponca City has tasked to provide teachers with the tools to teach our children. Please provide them with the tools they feel will help the children. These soft skills are just as important, if not more so, than, quote, reading, writing, and arithmetic. I support PCPS purchasing the Super Noodle SEL curriculum.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. We have our next couple.
We have Kim Miller, and she would like to discuss transgender policies.
So that's item 5. Is that correct? On our agenda? The action on the board policy changes? Is that the one that's related to action?
Yeah, that would be 4.1.
Ma'am, you can just say, is it 4.1?
4.1. 4.1.
Oh, I see. That's the superintendent's report, but I think you mean 5.
Oh, 5. Okay, I catch the wrong.
All right, if you could state your name first, you're
Sure.
going to have 3 minutes, and then a group affiliation.
Okay, sure. Kim Miller, just speaking as an individual and a K County resident. Specifically to the transgender policies that are being proposed. The first one, students transgender and non-binary student records policy. Under definitions in paragraph 1 and excerpt, avoid terms that make these students uncomfortable. Obviously, these are rhetorical questions. So a student, teacher, or staff member must perpetuate a lie based on how a troubled student identifies themselves on any given day that could conceivably change during the day. Paragraph 1, terminology and language may differ and evolve based on region. A student, teacher, or staff member must learn and relearn, seemingly almost daily, the ever-evolving identification glossary. Paragraph 2, imposing labels, obligation of district personnel. And this paragraph just reiterates the fact that a lie must be directly propped up, restated, and supported. And how does this comport with objective truths, such as there is male and female, period? Commenting on the privacy and confidentiality, paragraph 2, appropriate support services they may need to make the disclosure in a safe and supportive environment. That word again, support, so we must at significant cost of time, resources, and money support this specialized class of people that want to be included yet purposely make themselves exclusive. And then what about potential litigation costs associated with someone unintentionally with no harm or malice in mind mislabeling or incorrectly addressing a student with these conditions? I was a little bit confused on paragraphs 3 and 4, but that might be my misunderstanding. They seemed a little bit contradictory in that same section. Use of preferred name, pronoun, or gender. So the rights of these students supersede the rights to tell the truth and not perpetuate a lie. Under the student's record section, how much time, money, and how many resources will be needed to maintain and audit compliance of these standards that are proposed? The other policy, excuse me, discrimination of transgender individualism, optional policy. I'm not sure in the context of this what the optional means, but I'm going to go ahead and comment. On the school transition plan, how much time, money, and how many resources will be needed to implement, maintain, and manage the transition plan? And what responsibility does the transgender person bear in any of this whole thing to hopefully enable a more harmonious collaboration and learning? Gender segregated activities. I'm really not sure how you speak to and teach female health to a male and it make any sense. And the training and professional development, is this training? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Public comment, or next.
Next person is Zach Murray, and he would like to address 9.E supernoodle.
Mr. Murray, please get your microphone and tell us your name, your group affiliation if applicable, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Zach Murray, President of the Ponca City Association of Classroom Teachers, speaking on behalf of the association, speaking to item 8.9E. Board members, last month you heard from several individuals from the community with concerns about the social emotional learning curriculum Supernoodle. With the exception of Mr. O'Neill, I am unaware that any of those citizens have a connection currently to our school system. They are not teachers. They do not have children in our school system. We did not hear from teachers last month. I surveyed members of the association with what had been discussed with the Supernoodle curriculum, asking them their thoughts, asking them if they were familiar with it, if they felt their rating of it from very harmful to very beneficial, or no opinion, if they were not aware of it, and then any other comments they might have. Of those who responded, only one stated it was very harmful, and they did not give any additional feedback as to why they thought that. 30 said it was beneficial, somewhat beneficial, or very beneficial, and then several thought it was neither beneficial nor harmful. What's important here is that the teachers stated in several comments that this is something beneficial. Their students do better when they are taught these methods to better regulate their behavior. As to the comment of responsible choices, we're not talking about things that are based in Marxism. We're talking about teaching little Johnny that if Bobby takes the toy he's playing with, it is not appropriate to punch him in the face. Those are the things we're looking at. Proper behavior in the classroom. Due to the disruptions from COVID, our students are struggling. They need the social emotional learning that they can be better able to learn in the classroom. Additionally, many of the concerns focused on potential religious, or rather lack of religious aspects of social emotional learning. Those speakers against all stated that they felt this should be coming from a Christian perspective. We are a public school system. If we bring in a Christian perspective, we have to bring in everything else. And I would be shocked if those speaking against the Supernoodle curriculum would be okay with perspectives that went through a Hindu or Islam or say Satanism viewpoint. They would want only their viewpoint. It was stated numerous times that this would be indoctrination of our students. From where I'm standing, from what I heard last week and what I've heard this evening, the only ones that want to indoctrinate our students are those opposed to the social emotional learning curriculum. I would urge board members to support our students and approve the purchase of the Super Noodle curriculum. Thank you.
Is that our final? Moving on to item number 3, we have reports from potential board discussion. A safety action plan. When Jason, is he back from the meeting? He's not. So we're going to go ahead and switch those around a little bit.
I can do
If
it.
everybody's okay with that. Oh, you're going to do that one?
Can I do it?
Oh, I don't know. Can you do Jason for it? Do you know anything about operations?
I might know a few things about operations.
It's only its the one
I
right.
might not know why our protector.
Okay, so we have a safety action plan and an alternate education report after that.
Yeah, and I apologize, board members. Director Levitt is over at the City Commission meeting tonight. The City Commission is exploring the district's request to rename a portion of Brookfield Wildcat Way. So in his stead, I'll be presenting our safety action plan for 23-24. This is something required each year to make sure that our board is informed and our community is informed of some of the things that we've done as a district. Some of this is going to feel like repeat because a lot of it is, because we've been a very proactive school district in what we can do to make sure that we're enhancing the safety of our students, our teachers, our administrators, and that we're keeping the outside threats out and making a nurturing environment inside the school. Past bond issues, this has been a big thing for our community, was what can we do to enhance the security at our front doors, making sure that each of our individuals check in through our lobby guards. Over the past 3 years, we've invested more in our infrastructure and adding additional cameras throughout most of our secondary sites and a few key positions around our elementary schools. We do have our Wildcat safety team at the high school. We've moved from contracting out to bringing in our own security guards that are trained for providing safety and security at the student parking lot entrances and our student parking lot and at our front doors at the high school. Each year, our staff is required to go through ALICE training. We have one certified ALICE instructor left that works for the district, and Sean Tagliatella, assistant principal at the high school. And we're also doing additional security upgrades across the district. Some of those include enhancing secure entrances at all sites. This summer, we have plans for Wildcat Academy over behind Roosevelt and at West Middle School this summer. Again, like I said, we do ALICE training for each of our certified employees. All of our students do it each year, and we are required to drill on it twice a year. We've also, like I said, added additional cameras to our school infrastructure. We'd love to add even more if we possibly could, as funds allow. Just some different things that what we do for our teachers and our students. Sometimes I feel like we do so many drills, but we are required to do drills and make sure that our students know what to do if there's ever an event, or staff knows what to do. And a lot of times we overlook that we have a lot of substitute teachers in our building, and it's important for them to be aware of what we're doing in an event, whether that's a security drill or even a fire drill, that they know how to get those kids out of the building and into a safe spot, and how to report and account for any kids that may have been in the bathroom or in passing periods or at lunch. So just a lot of practice that we can do as an administration. After each of those drills, we do sit down and evaluate what went right, what went wrong, what can we improve on, and how to communicate that out to our staff. Knock boxes, those are just part of building codes that we have around. Alarm systems and monitoring, we do have a very robust fire alarm system, and it seems like each project it gets a little more nuanced and more layered. Even in our new softball stadium, we'll have fire strobes and voice evacuation, same thing at baseball. We just finished putting in a fire alarm system in our barn at the Bow Ag Farm. I think we have the safest sheep and chickens in Bay County because of it. But the state is very serious about fire alarm systems and monitoring, and we have to adhere to all of those for building code procedures. We produce flip charts each year that you'll see, emergency procedure guides. Each of the certified teachers get this. It's in our main offices, but it's a handy flip chart if there's a bomb threat or an explosive reported on campus, if there's an active shooter, what to do in those situations. And we ask our team to just brief up on that. If it's an active shooter situation, I'm hoping our people aren't going to the flip chart to determine what to do. They should be drilled into their head on how to do it. So that's just a handy guide, though, to keep up, or them to. Sorry, I don't know what that was. The other thing we do is hazard mitigation. We partner with the city of Ponca City on this and some of our other community partners to, if there was ever, let's say, a big hazard that happened at Phillips 66, or if we had what Shawnee had with an F5 tornado coming through and wiping out half their town, that we have plans in place on how we would help leverage our city, our community partners to mitigate those hazards as much as possible. Some things that were kind of factors in when we make our decisions. Everyone wants to have the safest school district possible, but sometimes money becomes a problem when you're trying to think how's the best way to add security, fencing around the school, or if I need more cameras or bullet-resistant glass. So we have to be very strategic in how we plan. Sometimes we have to make some tough decisions, and you know this as a property committee and as a board that there's always a desire to want to do it all right at once, but sometimes money and also having staff to be able to implement it can cause delays or impede any progress there. And then once you start on working on something, you realize that there's 5 other things that need to be done to make that as safe as a space as possible, and so you just kind of run into some inadvertent issues there on that deal. Some of the safety plan things, we've tried to think of everything to include in there. Thank you to 2020, we also have what to do now in a global pandemic. You can see in there pandemic preparedness. That was updated from the Spanish influenza from the 1920s, so we've updated that now, so we've got some good processes in place for a school district. I thought Ponca City did a really great job. I wasn't working for the district at the time, but I think that you all did a great job in having to navigate that tough time, and there were some difficult decisions to make. But at the end of the day, you have a responsibility to keep your students and staff safe, and I think that we've done an admirable job in that. And if anyone says differently, they should sit in those seats and try doing what you all did on that. But we also have everything you think of, safety. Some of this is also very regional. We have issues for pipeline safety. What would happen if there was a refinery explosion, or God forbid, anything of that nature. But we as a district have an obligation to make certain that our people are aware, that Jason Levitt and his team are aware and have an idea of how best to deal with a situation like that. A lot of these things, it's not just what to do during an event, but most of the work for the district will come into place after the event. And last year, our team, operations team, and our local Ponca City Police Department, K County Sheriffs, Alliance Health Regional Medical Center, a lot of our community partners got together to talk about how would our school district respond if any of these events happened. Whether we had students that were hurt, the classroom of students hurt, or if hurt or injured or maimed, what would we do when our cell phones quit working? How would we communicate? So a lot of that was able to work through and talk to our local police. If we had an event that was a true emergency at an elementary school, we learned this from the Uvalde situation. You're not going to get to that elementary school. If I left here and it was at Liberty, the parents would descend on that school so fast, and rightfully so. So we have to be able to figure out ways to maintain a perimeter, make sure that we get the right people into the building to eliminate any threats and get the kids out safe as possible, and to get those kids accounted for and to the people they're responsible to. So we have we've really thought through and worked through a lot of these scenarios, a lot of tabletop exercises as a group to kind of play how that might work out in a real world situation in Ponca City. We've even laid out maps on best routes to get in and out of the school and best places for principals to get their kids as rally points if we needed to in the community. So, there's never really a timeline on how this is implemented. Like I said, we revisit this each and every year, multiple times throughout the year. Each of our building principals are required to have 4 Safe Schools Committee meetings each year, where they talk about drills and they talk about different things in their own building. Other things that we tried to do, and you guys just did this, was improve our communication at our activity events by providing more radios. We've noticed that we were having a hard time with cell phone reception during a football game. I think it's just as many people start packed in that one spot that cell networks are not able to accommodate them in North Central Oklahoma. So going to a two-way radio was helpful for our principals to be able to communicate between one end of the stadium or to the other, and make sure that we have a good line of communication open between them, our SROs, and any security that's working the event there. Other things that we're doing is, we reprint these procedures guides every 2 to 3 years. We're on a 3-year cycle right now because not a lot has changed in it. Our practices are still pretty consistent. With the bond issue passage in October of 2021, we had in there safety and upgrades at West and at Wildcat Academy that will make each of our entrances in our buildings 100% bullet resistant. And then we've got some other issues, other funds that we can tap into. One of the most notable things that happened this year through the state of Oklahoma through funding was the funding of the security grants. Each school, regardless of size, was funded $92,000 to help harden schools. You're going to see that for the next 3 years. Our district has been working in our property committee to discuss those plans to help harden those schools. We're kind of prioritizing what's most important, what's least important. Well, everything feels important, but making the best decision possible that's going to impact the most kids in our community as a whole. So, kind of our goals for the next review, and we'll do this next year at the same time, is, Jason and his team are going to be updating this plan annually, making any changes. I will be excited to report next year some of the upgrades that took place over these next 12 months based off that security money that we received coming from the state. That money should be we're asking the timeline for that September 15th because we need to make our request, but we have already a good list of ideas that will help create safer schools, and I think will be more appropriate to share in committees and not in a public meeting so as to not expose any district vulnerabilities right now. So, do any questions from the board on our annual safety update? All right, thank you.
I think I would go ahead and let the cat out of the bag a little bit about a couple of plans for safety, the Sullins, the Robinson deal that we're looking at.
Okay, yeah.
From a timing standpoint, we probably can't get them this week.
Right. So everyone's been made aware of what happened at Choctaw 2 weeks ago, which is every administrator's worst nightmare, where a 16-year-old student fired a weapon, injured and killed another student at the Choctaw Del City or Midwest. I can't remember which school it was. As a result of that, each week, a little background, each week the superintendents of the state of Oklahoma meet together to talk about pressing issues in education, what challenges and issues that are having, and obviously at that time we heard from the Choctaw superintendent about that situation and how their district was responding to it, and any information that he could help us to make sure that we have more fortunate Friday nights moving on. One of the things that their district has purchased, and a lot of them across Oklahoma are looking and exploring to, are these portable gun detection devices that would be like a metal detector, but it detects dense steel, so your phone shouldn't set it off, or your necklace or your belt buckle, but if you had a weapon, like a knife or a gun, it would even go off. So we've met with company representatives, Jason, myself, and we've explored some safety grants, if that's a possibility that we would want for events in Ponca City. It seems like any event you go to now, you're walking through those. This past week, or 2 weeks ago at OSU, I noticed you have to walk through them at the last Thunder game and concert at the Chesapeake, or now it's Paycon. You walk through them. So I think it's almost becoming an expectation in a public gathering that you have to walk through a metal detector to make sure that there's no weapons on you. Now, we've increased our physical presence of people, administrators, police officers. I feel very confident that we have the most of any 6A schools in our neighborhood. Now, we didn't have as many as what Oklahoma City Public Schools or Tulsa Public Schools do. They have their own police forces, but for a school our size, Sand Springs, Bartlesville, Enid, Stillwater, we did have a very good presence from our local Ponca City Police Department. So we're kind of exploring that, what that might look like, how the school would help administer that to try to create a safer environment at our events and activities, so parents would have peace of mind and knowing that it was an evening fun of festivities and not anything to worry about on the security front. The other things we're looking at, obviously, we would love to have some additional cameras, but I think really the best thing that we can do is how can we make sure that the kids in our building are staying safe and that the right people are in the building and not the wrong people stay out of the building. So we would love to explore hiring SROs and more police officers or armed, uniformed, fleet certified personnel, but they're just not out there. We've worked with our Ponca City Police, the K County Sheriffs, and asked them if there's anybody that we could hire, even retired individuals that might be interested in coming. And I think they would have already hired them if they were. So other things we're trying to do is just look at, like I said, how can we keep the right people in our buildings and the wrong people out of our buildings. And that's kind of the climate and the world we're growing up in, and it's unfortunate. But it's, like I said, it's something that keeps me awake at night and I don't want to have to ever deal with. But as a parent, it's, you know, you think every day, you don't want to think that, but you hug on them and tell them you love them. So, any questions for me or Jason? I can report back, tell them to do a better job on.
Thank you.
All right.
And as item 2, we have an alternative education report by Barbara Streeter.
So last year, we were not evaluated by the State Department. I did get the binder ready and had it all ready to go with Dr. Hawkins. And they finally got around to looking at it in April, but it was an odd year, so we're only evaluated in odd years, so we didn't get a formal evaluation last year. So I just kind of put together some data to kind of let you know what we're doing over at Wildcat. Last year we served 117 students. We had 39 graduates. We had 9 that attended Pioneer Tech. We had 4 concurrent. We had 19 students that also worked and received a work study credit. Actually, no, that's this year. I'm so sorry. That's this year. No, now I'm confused. I'm sorry, I'm confusing myself. This was last year. 74 female and 43 males. We were heavy on the females last year, and strangely enough, that's kind of how alternative ed goes, is we're usually heavy on the girls and not so much on the boys. And we were really proud of our 4 concurrent students. That's kind of more than what we normally have. So concurrent is, you know, they're doing college credits at the same time. Let's see here. Our intervention and motivational strategies, we had a student of the month. We had our end of the year auction last year. Kids absolutely love that. They're so fun to watch. We have our wall in the hallway that the kids sign when they graduate. We had spirit days. We are growing our library. Big spread of story. We have no school on Friday if they're passing and ahead of all their classes. We bought a popcorn machine, and so we have popcorn parties, and we did a survey, and we asked the kids, what's something that you would really like us to do that we're not doing? And a lot of them said the seats were not comfortable. So again, thank you, Brenda Story. She helped us purchase rolling chairs, and what we did was, if you're a senior, you get a rolling chair. So I actually had somebody come in and tattle today that somebody was sitting in a rolling chair that looked a senior. So that's like a big thing. You know, you're a senior, you get a chair that rolls, and so they get the comfortable chair if they're a senior. We had, this was wonderful. All of our students were given the opportunity to participate in art with City Art. They sent over an artist every Wednesday. They bought the supplies. They had a grant. They bought the supplies. They worked with our kids. Our kids were able to create just different mediums. It wasn't just like drawing or painting. They did photography, did all kinds of fun stuff. And then they had an art show at City Central in April, and all their art was on display, and we took them up there and let them walk through, and the kids were really proud of it. It was really neat. So we really appreciated that. And then they actually took our kids that were in art to a interactive art exhibit in the city, and fed them a really nice meal, which, you know, our kids, a lot of our kids don't go out of town, and they sure don't eat out. So that was a lot of fun for our kids. That was the big thing. They got to eat, and they got to get whatever they wanted. So it was really a neat thing, and we really appreciated Taryn Lyles and his group for doing that. This year, we have 91 students. We're capped at 90, so I think I looked, we're back down to 89. I had a couple that changed over to virtual. So we do have a waiting list, so I'll fill those seats, because I can't keep a waiting list. And we have 13.
Why did you cap it at 90 when you had 117 this year?
Because we had lost some and brought some in, so total for the year, we served 117, but not all at once.
So it is 91 cap, or 90 cap because of teachers?
Yes, we can, for all to ed, because it's different than everything else, we are capped. Every teacher can only be responsible for 15 students. So we have 6 teachers, so each teacher can only have 15 students. So we have 4 classrooms. 2 classrooms have 1 teacher in them, so they're capped at 15, and then we have 2 classrooms with 2 teachers in them, and those classrooms have 30. Okay. And then we have 10 students that are doing extracurriculars at the high school. We have we have a couple in band, we have some in orchestra, chorus, football, soccer. So we have kids that are doing things in band or at the high school. And then I added the virtual data, even though it's not considered alt-ed. I didn't know if you guys were interested in this. We served a total of 107 students. I believe first semester we had 66, the second semester we had 69. We had 30 graduates. We had 18 kids that failed 2 or more courses, and then we sent 6 back to the high school. Unfortunately, a lot of times when we drop them and send them back to high school, they don't go. They just don't go anywhere. When we drop them and send them back to the high school, I let them know that they're being dropped, they need to return to the high school, but they don't always go, unfortunately. There are currently 53, actually there's 57, I learned today. That number continues to grow. There are 2 part-time teachers and a full-time teachers that monitor the testing center, and they call, the 2 teachers call on student progress. And then I create the virtual accounts, do a graduation check, put them in their courses, and then I meet with the student and the parent before they're allowed to be in virtual and go over the rules and the expectations for the virtual program. I also do their attendance, turn in their eligibility, and then I monitor their progress weekly, and then I turn in all their grades. Our building does the phone calls, we field phone calls, troubleshoot, anything that has to do with virtual, we kind of take care of that. And then our virtual students right now they receive assistance from Wildcat Academy teachers. We actually have 1 virtual student that comes up at 1:30 and stays until 4 days a week and to get extra help. And our teachers just do that because they're there anyway, so they're just willing to work with these kids. But Dr. Hawkins is kind of taking the lead on some of this, and she's come up with hiring some teachers to be tutoring. So we actually met about that today, and so that's going to be something that will happen hopefully starting next week, that we'll have actual core teachers to kind of support these kids that are in the virtual program. Share, there are only 15 students enrolled in the Share program, and that number continues to decline. I know that they had to do away with a section of Share, so Carl Lyons is the only one doing Share right now. And then I take care of those kids too. They have to come to me if they want to go to Share. I put them in a schedule, I do their attendance, I turn in their grades also. Does anybody have any questions for me?
What is the end of the year auction?
Okay, so our kids, starting in January, they get points for attendance, for their grade, for their reading scores, because we all do Reading Plus, so they get little points. The teacher keeps track of the points, and then at the end of the school year, we write their points, we hide it, nobody can see your points, and then we have items they can bid on using their points. So we set them all out. Our pie partners donate, and then we use whatever money we can come up with to purchase items. and then the kids bid on them. It's so fun. If you've never been, you really ought to come because it's just hilarious to watch them bid, and they get real excited about it. And we didn't have it year before last. Instead, we did like a senior celebration, and our kids were just so disappointed. They wanted that auction. They liked that auction. So that's the big talk. Even new kids that come, they're like, "Are we going to do an auction?" Yeah, we're going to do an auction. So we just do that at the end of the school year. It's a lot of fun.
And you said that you sent 2 back to the high school, or some
I
back to the high
sent,
school?
I believe there were 6. Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you send them back to the high school?
If they're not working, if they're not doing anything, and then if they're for virtual, if they are, they don't do their classes and they fail them, 2 or more classes, they're not allowed to be virtual the next semester. And I have a list, if you've ever, according to our virtual rules, if you're virtual and you don't work and you're kicked out of virtual, you're not allowed back in. So if you've done it once, you can't come back.
Yeah, we talked about that in the curriculum meeting, because, you know, from the beginning, the kids would not do what they were supposed to and turn in their work and stuff like that, and they were given a lot of opportunities to do that, and they just chose not to. They were sent back to the high school from the virtual, you know, and not necessarily from your program, but, you know, because, they're, you know, they should have to show up, but then you say they don't show up, so.
Yeah, they don't go to high, and, you know, and it's really hard when you send them back to the high school, you know, at a certain point, they're not gonna get a grade there either. You know, so if you're sending them back, they're in a classroom, and they know they're not going to get a grade, so, you know, are they gonna be, I mean, there's just a lot of factors. It's almost a case by case, and we talked about that for these kids. You know, is it better to keep them and hope they'll eventually get sent? You know, we nag them. You know, I call, Mr. Young and Mr. Scott call, you know, I call parents, I email parents, you know, I go to where they work, you know, I nag them. Seniors, I really stay on, and the high school counselors help with that, and we kind of stay on them, and I think that's why we had so many of our seniors that did graduate. And it's just because we really stay on them. You know, we work hard with them. I know that at the end of the school year last year, even the Wildcat teachers, we were bringing them up and they were working with them, you know, just to try to get them graduated. Virtual's a lot of work.
Well, you do a wonderful job. I mean, this woman does a wonderful job.
Thank you.
We had tried several things before, and she has the one that's been the most successful. I will tell you that. We tried 3 different things,
Thank
and
you.
they did not work.
I agree, Judy. And Carla, I was actually wondering, just overall, what is the parental support like, and is it?
For Wildcat, you know, we make a weekly phone call. Our teachers, that's part of their job, is they have to make a contact every Thursday with the parent. Parents love it because it's not always a bad thing. You know, we're calling and we're telling you your kid's doing great, you know, your kid's got good grades, your kid's here, you know, we love your kid. And so we have, our parental support is amazing. Yeah, we have a lot. I mean, if I call a parent because there's an issue, they don't fuss with me. Not 9 times out of 10, actually, very seldom have I had a parent that I've had to call and say, hey, you got a bad parent, you're headed your way. You know, because they know that, you know, these are the rules, and, you know, we're good to their kids, we love their kids, and we take good care of them, and they know that and appreciate it.
Thank you for your report. Do they have any other questions?
Anything else?
All right.
Thank you. Thanks.
Moving on to item number 4, the superintendent's report with potential board discussion. And item number 1, we have proposed board policy changes, and I believe all of our members have your folder with the reference changes that Adam will be going over with us tonight.
We were threatened that we better bring these back.
I know Lori spent a lot of time working on this.
Lori said, if you take these home, you better bring them back.
She did a great job working on those. So just a little background, policy adoption, what we're going to do, this is in practices before, is each of the directors are going to present on policies that will, this board will consider for adoption or approval. And each of the directors who are responsible over that field will give a little snippet of kind of an overview of some of the highlights of those policy changes. Every year we have to do policy adoption and changes, and the reason why is every year our legislators get together in January and have a lot of fun pass a bunch of laws and put them into effect by the time they adjourn in May. That will have a direct impact on what we do as a school district. Our commitment as a school district is to only present policies that have any direct implications with state law and anything to do with state accreditation. Each year our districts are accredited in October. Our date is on October 6th, and these policies are a direct reflection of anything that would have to do with Oklahoma law, federal law, or our accreditation to the State Department of Education. So we're going to go first. The very first one deals with the school board, and that's you, and I'm going to present on this one. And this deals with continuing education. What we're doing, the first thing is our attorneys have recommended removing paragraph 3. So it's no longer required to include workshop completion certificates in the board's minutes. Revising paragraph 4, removing the specific dollar amounts and rewording to say not to exceed the daily rates as provided in the State Travel Reimbursement Act and district policy. So basically, you'll get paid per diem and mileage rates for continuing education. So what we're just going to do is continue on through. I did want to say too, I forgot to say this, but each year our district subscribes to a service through RFR. That's the attorneys this board is hired to represent the school board and the district in all legal matters. And they compile these policies, reviewing all the state laws to make certain that we're above board in all that we do. So we'll just continue on. I think the next one is Terry Vogel.
This is under the community relations section of our board policy, and it is about charter schools. We do have existing policy about charter schools. Our district can sponsor a charter school, and our district can decide not to sponsor a charter school. So the new policy allows the BOE to approve a non-statewide virtual charter school. Before it was just a charter school, not a virtual one. So it can be an actual brick and mortar school, charter school, or a virtual now. Charter schools are sponsored by the BOE. They have to be non-secretarian. So we can't do any charter schools that are religious. If a charter school application is approved by the BOE, the charter school will be able to serve as many students as are specified in the contract. The charter school shall be exempt from all statutes and rules relating to school boards or education and school districts, provided, however, that a charter school shall comply with all federal regulations and state and local rules and statutes. The approval or denial of a charter school application, it was changed from 90 days to 60 days. So if an application is put in, you have 90 days. You used to have 90 days to consider it. Now you only have 60. A charter school cannot begin serving students without a contract in place, and it must be approved in an open meeting by the BOE. If you enter into a contract with a charter school, you will be required to complete additional trainings, which include a designee from the school board, so it would be more work on your end. If the BOE enters into a contract beginning in the 24-25 school year, board members would be required to complete annual sponsor workshop requirements. So again, that would be on top of everything else that you have to do. The charter school board must work with the local BOE and must notify the district within 10 business days in the instance of non-compliance. So if the charter school is doing something that doesn't comply with the contract, that they went into agreement with you guys, then they would have to let you know within 10 business days. An initial charter contract approved after July of 24 will be for a term of 5 years. The renewal time for ongoing contracts has been changed from 5 to 10-year duration. So I just brought out the changes in the existing policy for charters. There were reasons that you could terminate a contract that you had for a charter school. The reasons for termination were pretty broad. They included failure to meet student performance requirements and performance framework, failure to meet the standards of a fiscal management, and violation of the law or other good cause. So it's pretty broad on reasons that you could terminate. Yeah, thank you. A paragraph has been added to include that if there are weaknesses, concerns, violations, or deficiencies, the sponsoring district may require the charter school to develop a corrective action plan. Oh, and then here I am on my next one. Community relations. We do have an existing parent bill of rights, and so there's being things added to the parent bill of rights. There are options for this policy, like you may choose this option or you may choose this option. It is being revised to contain provisions from the OSBE administrative rules issued February 23. This policy contains all areas outlined in policy that state a parent's rights, which range from previewing teacher materials, to clubs, to report cards, to transcripts. So it kind of outlines all the parents' rights under that parental rights policy. So this is the part, they had two sections. The law states that sex education is defined as sex or sexuality education as any class, program, curriculum, instruction, test, survey, questionnaire, course, or other instructional materials that relate to sexual behavior, sexual attitudes, or sexuality, including but not limited to gender, identity, or sexual orientation. So that is the state's definition of sex education. I spoke with Ms. Hawkins with secondary. We do not have sex education in our high schools. I spoke with our nurses, gave them this definition. We do not have anything that we teach students that goes under this definition. So at this time, we do not have sex education. Because the district does not have any courses or instruction that meet this criteria, we will insert the following into our Bill of Rights. The district does not currently provide sex education for students. If sex education is offered in the future, parents may opt their student out of the district-sponsored sex education program by following the procedures established in item 4, and item 4 is right there. So that is what the parents would go through if we begin to teach sex education. At this point, we will adopt that we do not.
So the options you're saying do not apply that are in the book because we're saying we don't offer it.
Correct. We could either say we do have it.
And then you have to pick an option, 1, 2, 3, or 8.
Correct.
Or
we do not have it, and if we do get it, this is how parents would go through to opt their kids out.
So we're not using any of the options in the material you gave us. We're writing our own saying we don't offer it.
The option was either we do offer it or we do not. It was in there.
Our recommendation is we do not.
Yeah.
That's the
Well,
option.
that's not what I'm seeing on this one.
You're talking about on the A, or A, B, C, or D?
Or.
Yeah, so what she's saying is like where it says item 4, it says either you can choose either item 4 or item 4. And we're not doing the first paragraph of 4, we're doing the second one of 4. And then on the next page, it doesn't have a page number, but the one at the top where it says A or A, we're choosing the second A. Is that correct, Karen?
Perfect.
National Law, so. Yes, Mr. Dooley, for section 3.
Brian Dooley was very controversial.
This one's pretty quick and pretty
Okay.
straightforward. The policy this year is
basically the same policy as last year with one revision. They're changing the revision from the state statute of 201 to 202, which is almost identical to the policy itself. And it's directly reflective of the statute. It tells us exactly what we need to do and what is considered appropriate in the realm of what is allowed, what is available for children or staff to access on the internet, how we prevent it, what to do if it is not compromised, but if someone does manage to get access to something that is considered inappropriate, and what we would do as a district to mitigate that. And that's really basically what it is.
Any questions for Ryan?
Jason still over at the City Commission meeting, so I'll do this one. Section 3, administration, use of multiple occupancy restrooms and changing areas. This was the bathroom bill that was passed, not last year, but the year prior. This is an amendment to that bathroom bill, and that bathroom bill simply stated that you have to go to the bathroom of your biological sex assigned at birth. Where we ran into, and that applies to locker rooms and bathrooms, where we ran into a problem with that in schools in Oklahoma is we had male coaches of female sports or female coaches of male sports, and they were not allowed to be in the locker room at all during halftime before the game or after the game. So this is an amendment to Senate Bill 26 that will, that kind of clarified some of that language and clean that up to allow coaches of the opposite sex or adults of the opposite sex to be present in the locker room. You can see there that it requires students to be fully clothed, and that they have to have, if they're opposite sex, have an adult of the opposite sex, of the same sex of the locker room that they're going into, present with them. That cannot be a student, it must be an individual over 18 years age. And non-compliance by this school district or any school district may result in a 5% decrease in state funding. Any questions?
Yeah, on the deal that Lori gave us, it says the coach must be accompanied by at least one additional adult at all times.
Yes.
How the small schools going to do that if they only have one coach?
They better get a parent volunteer.
So they can't even go in the.
Nope. If they're an opposite sex, they are not allowed to do that. They have to be, if the coach is the opposite sex of the student, yeah, if they have to have someone of the same sex of the students with them present 100% of the time in that locker room.
But only if it's, but it says.
What paragraph?
I'm looking at the red print. The coach must be accompanied by at least one additional adult at all times.
Yeah, and they define an adult as anyone 18 years or older that cannot be a current high school student.
So but according to that, it doesn't say that if it's opposite sex. The next bullet item says the opposite sex.
Yeah, that might have just been an omission on the.
It's only if it's the opposite sex.
Only if it's the opposite sex, yeah. Senate Bill 26.
Okay.
This is the amendment to the bathroom bill.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't think it says that in the actual policy, I think it was just one of the little points that got.
Yeah, that might have just been.
Yeah, that was the only question I had on that.
Oh, all right. Dr. Hopkins?
Okay, this one is selection of instructional media centers, materials, and library. This is required, and it requires both school and classroom libraries to follow new rules regarding obscenity and sexualized materials, and districts to annually submit to the State Department of Education a complete list of all books and materials available in school libraries. The library media complaint must also apply to books and materials in classroom libraries, the complaint form. Ponca Schools instructional material review policy already allows anyone to request a review of any curriculum, instruction, or library materials. Ponca City Public Schools library catalog is provided to the public on the district's website. It's open to anyone. Ponca City Public Schools adheres to the Oklahoma State Department of Education's textbook adoption process and adopts materials reviewed and approved by the State Textbook Committee that are aligned to the Oklahoma academic standards. So the required changes to our policy update will include now a prohibition and definition of pornography. And then by October 1st each year, the superintendent must complete and sign an attestation stating a list of library materials are provided to the public. And we'll probably also provide our website. I think I'm next.
Any questions for
Go back.
Your boss, your name is very similar to my boss's name, so I'm just going to tell you. Sorry about that.
Whatever.
Thank you, Dr. Baca.
The next one is me, and it is prohibition on race and sex discrimination in curriculum and instruction. This one's related to the one we discussed last year and the year before with House Bill 1775. Ponca City Public Schools provides a complaint form on the website for race, sex discrimination. That is in our curriculum or what is being taught, as well as our employees. To report, we have a different process to report discrimination or address potential retaliation for employees. So this policy covers both. If there's a complaint about what is being taught or making a student feel uncomfortable, or if there's a complaint by an employee for discrimination or retaliation. The changes to this policy are primarily fines or due dates. It decreased the number of days for complaint investigation and reporting and added an additional anti-retaliation clause. The PCPS policy states 90 days within receipt of a complaint the investigation will occur. This is reduced to 45 days within the receipt of a complaint the investigation will occur. The Ponca City Public Schools policy states the lead investigating coordinator is required to report the findings to the State Department of Education within 30 days. That is now reduced to 10 days once receiving that complaint. The additional criteria for the anti-retaliation policy just refers to the individual or the employee. It's related to the employee's complaint. If a person were to report discrimination, there's an anti-retaliation clause aligned to 3 different laws that are previously existing. So it just aligns to an additional law. And then there's a change of citation. They marked out one of the codes and laws at the end of the policy.
Questions for Dr. Arnes? Yeah. Beg your pardon? All right, thank you. Chief. Mrs. Scott.
All right, so you're required to comply with the Drug-Free Workplace Act. So basically, we can't do drugs. Our employees cannot. That's a short part of it. Can't do it. You can't sell it. You can't be on property, and violation could result in disciplinary action. The new part of this really has to do with the training piece, and you're gonna hear this kind of repeated, this thing. One of the new things is that the district shall provide this training the first year a teacher is employed by the district, and then every 5th year. But that is way too difficult to track. And so we have our teachers just do it every year. Our employees will do it every year, and then we're not trying, no one will get missed in the cracks, because that would be impossible. And so this training we do yearly through GCN. And so, that one.
And this district provides teachers a full day to do all this.
I've got a question on that one, Jennifer.
Okay.
It says here that the use, possession, dispensing, manufacture, sale, blah, 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 is a no-no.
Correct.
What if the teacher has a card?
That
a
doesn't, it does
marijuana
not
card?
address card. The teachers have a card. I know who those people are, probably nobody else does in this district, actually.
But it says here that they can be,
But they can't, you still can't come to work high.
no, I'm not saying, but they can have a card as long as it's not in their, as long as they don't have the marijuana
And
or
they're
whatever
correct.
in them.
They can't have it with them.
No, they can't have it on.
They can't have it on school, just like tobacco, you can't smoke on school property either. You can't even be in our parking lot if you're on school property, you need to go across the street. You can't be here to do that.
Any other questions for us?
All right. Jason, I think this is you.
Mr. Levitt, we're going back.
So if they have a card,
Yes.
they're still not allowed to have it with them.
That is correct. You can't have tobacco with you on school property either.
Is there a difference between that and prescription drugs? Like if they have a medication they need to take that day, or opposed to like they probably aren't taking pain, you can't be at school and take pain medication though, right? Right? It's not the same.
I don't think it's the same.
Right.
Because then you would have a prescription.
Right.
And you would have doc that's different than this. Huh?
Okay, it also, I think, talks in there about they can't bring reproach to the school.
That's correct. And that part isn't new. The only new part is that really in this policy has to do with the training. The other part isn't new. The only new part is the training.
Thank you. I was gonna call you Blister because you showed up after all the work was done, but.
Yeah, well, I just glad to be here. I was just at the city council meeting tonight, and we officially got the Brookfield Street renamed to Wildcat Way, so it's pretty cool. I think it's a positive thing. Little kids in elementary schools are getting Wildcat of the Week. My kid got one this week, so I'm very proud of that. So, on the employee safety and insurance program, we already have first responder safety committees. Well, not exactly first responder, but safety committees that are throughout the school year. We currently do 4 during that time. This includes, as far as safety drills, fire drills, anything that may arise that our students and staff need to be aware of. Through GCN trainings, we do have staff training in that. So along with this state statute here, this is going to be a required deal for 7th through 12th grade teachers and a portion of safety in the workplace and in curriculum training. And this frequency of this training is determined by the board. So again, we don't have actual concrete time, date, when, so we've got to develop that time.
We click the next slide.
All right, so suicide awareness training and prevention, the new addition to this policy is the school district shall provide training to all staff members in the first year of employment with the district and then once every 5th year. And again, same thing, this is too hard to track, so everybody does it every year. And there is an optional section that says the superintendent or designate our suicide prevention coordinator task force shall establish procedures for identifying suicidal tendencies and high-risk behavior, including behavior that possesses an immediate threat of serious harm to the student or others, and intervention and post-vention measures such as when to assess the suicide risk, offer counseling, contact parents or legal guardians, and call law enforcement, healthcare providers, or the Department of Human Services. And this is already our practice. Honestly, we already have something in place very similar to this optional section.
So it's going to be added though? Okay.
The next is kind of Terry and I combined on this one. It's, the district certified personnel must earn a minimum of 5 points during each school year and accumulate a minimum of 75 points during a 5-year period. The new part of this, it says that no more than a total of 150 hours of local, state, or federal professional development or training shall be required for classroom teachers during any 5 period. And also, teachers shall maintain written documentation of all their completed professional development. And so our practice is that when teachers finish their professional development, they keep a copy of that, and then they also turn that into the curriculum department so that points can be recorded routinely. And Alice and suicide training certificates are kept by the principals at the sites, and then we also have sign-ins for completion. And so as far as the points go, I think kind of we're both on this together because she does staff development, but I often look at the negotiated agreement to make sure that we're okay. And in both ways, we are fine. As far as if anyone, the way our negotiated agreement is written, we would not go over that 150 hours. as far as making someone, if people chose to, that would be on them, which would be okay. So in both regards, we're all right. And then, so certified personnel, this is the new maternity leave policy that the state is implementing. And you're gonna see it twice, because one's on the certified side and the other is on the support side, but they both say the exact same thing. The full-time employees of the district who've been employed by the district for at least 1 year and have worked at least 1,250 hours during the preceding 12-month period shall be entitled to 6 weeks of paid maternity leave following the birth of an employee's child. The 6 weeks of paid maternity leave shall be immediately following the birth of the child, and the 6 weeks has to be in addition to and not in place of sick leave during the pregnancy. A district employee taking maternity leave pursuant to the new law shall be deprived of any compensation of other benefits to which the employee is otherwise entitled. The district shall file claims with the State Board of Education for reimbursement of expenses related to providing the eligible employee paid maternity leave. We don't know how that's happening yet because they don't know. They're working on it. But we'll figure it out once they tell us. And then with regard to any shared sick leave program which is currently offered or which may be offered in the future by the district, provided maternity leave must be used prior to any shared sick leave available under the district's program. So like we have a sick leave bank, and so essentially with this new program, no one will ever be able to get into the bank unless they truly have a sick, it's because of health, not because of maternity leave. Because they will use their six weeks of maternity leave first, and then if they want to use in excess of that, they will use their own sick leave. And then they would have to use all of that, and then they have to get to 20 days of the cost of the sub, and then they have to have a doctor's note before they can get into their bank. And so not very often, I mean, I say never pull that unless you have a really ill child, and I hope that never happens. Are there any questions on this?
They did appropriate the funds for this in the last session, but you're saying they haven't come up with a plan of how to get that reimbursed?
Right. My understanding is there's gonna be like a way we will go online and once we know, but I don't know what they're gonna ask. I don't know how we're gonna prove the day the baby is born. Because it has to start the day of the birth of the baby. And so I don't know what that entails yet. If they have to provide us a birth certificate, or if we take screenshots of Facebook pictures, or that's what we have to do. But we'll do it however they tell us to. The same is true for our, it's both the same thing for support and certified. I will say that many of our support members will never meet because it's the 1,250 hours. And so our 12-month employees will work that often, but if you're like a teacher's assistant, a 10-month teacher assistant, you will never work that many hours to qualify, just so you know.
Side question, do any of our staff that work during that year, do they ever apply for like a summer job to work to make it a 12 month? I'm just curious.
No, and it wouldn't
make it, okay, because it's two separate.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Go to section 7.
Yes, the new state law requires us to complete a form identifying our homeless students. Currently, we have that in our online registration right now. We're just going to update that new form so it meets the requirements of the State Department. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, this policy is just a revision and revised to a current policy that we already have. For PCPS, we're already doing child abuse, neglect and exploitation and trafficking training for people. This is just saying that districts have the option now to do it. It comes in this form.
the first year working in the district, and then every 5 academic years. This is to recognition of child abuse, training on recognition of child abuse and neglect, proper reporting, and available resources. Again, this is just an update to the Oklahoma statute.
Anna, did we skip student transfers, 7.5 to 4.0?
Right here, student transfers coming right up.
Yeah, we did.
I think we're out of order.
Okay.
That's okay.
It was a little bit out of order.
That's probably my fault.
Okay, so this is related to student transfers and our open transfer policy that you guys have heard a lot about in the last year or two. The optional policies for automatic approval of a transfer if the student's parent or legal guardian is employed by the district, and these are optional. If we weren't to put this in, if the parent or legal guardian is employed by the district regardless of district capacity, and the student does not meet one or more of the basis for a transfer denial, a sibling of a student who transfers, or a student who has attended the district as a resident at least 3 years prior. So those are 3 new options. There should be a bullet above that other, but there's not. 3 new options to add to our automatic approval of transfer, but the student may still be denied a transfer if he or she does not meet attendance and or discipline criteria that we do have established in our policy.
So is it your all's recommendation we take the RFR or the State Department of Education option?
The recommendation,
Well, it says optional sections provide 2 versions of automatic approval of transfer. RFR and OSDE.
That's all the same one.
Those are all here.
This is all RFR recommendation to be compliant with the State Department of Education rules in regards to
So what are the
transfer.
2 versions?
The version that we are willing to do is the one that's listed there, that if a student of a sibling that transfers that meets all the district established criteria for transferring is automatically accepted. The option B was that they can appeal the denial request is, that if the student meets the transfer policy for attendance and behavior that they're accepted in as a sibling, I think that was option A, wasn't it, Luann? Yeah.
well, it's just.
So we're taking option A in the book?
Yes.
Okay.
Stephanie, any question there? That's the optional there. Then the rule requires the determination of grade level capacity defined in policy, and we do that. The PCPS policy outlines the determination of grade level policy for traditional and virtual students. That is in our policy, as well as we publicize the capacity numbers, the actual capacity numbers on the PCPS website monthly. It's only required quarterly, but it is done monthly in our district. Our PCS policy provides an opportunity to appeal the decision to deny a transfer and outlines the process. It does go to the board. So it would be a change if we decided to go with the other option, is what I'm saying. We do have it in our policy. Our current policy provides for an appeal to the board if they're denied a transfer. And then our current policy provides the opportunity to appeal to the State Board of Education if our local Board of Education denies the transfer. And then our policy already provides for student athletes aligned to the state law and rules. We have a very expansive policy, so some of these changes appear to be indicated for schools that needed to catch up with their policy. Now, there is one strike through on the military children, where it says the student will be residing with a relative. They can't be, if we have that in our policy, we need to take that out. And the mandatory portion of this student transfer is that we provide, it's mandatory that we provide exhibits A and B, which are how we determine grade level capacity for traditional and virtual students, and what our capacity limits are. And the state asks for those, and I think that's also a part of our accreditation, and we prove that with evidence.
So you're saying we're going to stick with the existing policy?
we do need to put in the automatic transfer that you were discussing before. If we're doing an automatic transfer approval with a district employee's child, a student who has been with us for 3 years, but they do still have to meet the criteria, or a sibling of a student who transfers.
But that's
So-
Oklahoma statutes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And most of ours covers this, yes. We have the appeal process, we have the appeal to the local or the state board of education, and we have the process for our student athletes. So yes.
So we're pretty much covered.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Schwartz?
This is a revision to the current policy that was added last year based on a new statute last year. The only change in that was adding a qualifying sentence that had said that review would be, or data would be reviewed every 2 years to include information from the OPNA assessment, Oklahoma Prevention Needs Assessment. They added the clarifying statement to the extent the district has participated in such a survey and such information is available. I believe our district has in past years. I'm not sure if we have since COVID. I believe it's given an even number of years, so it's not an every year administration. Then they also added the state statute citation that was not added before.
Okay, the student search and seizure is an update to it. No student's clothing except for outerwear and shoes can be removed during a student search. So you also include any type of handwear, hand coverings. The thing that can't be removed is a head covering that serves as a religious purpose. And if there is something that is an illegal item that is found, the item can now be transported to the proper location in a locked container, accompanying a letter from the superintendent for permission to do so, and that employee has to have a form of school ID in order to do so. The next policy is...
Do we have locked containers at all locations?
We do not. We have to determine size, how much we need for that, but that's not going to be a problem to get.
Okay.
I mean, this can include any kind of alcohol beverage, vape, illegal substance, weapon, so this gives us authority to do so. The locker search and seizure now, it's very similar to student search and seizure. The only difference is it's not searching the student's person. It's transporting those beverages or anything, any kind of legal substance, illegal product in a locked container with an ID to the proper location. So that's the only difference between the two.
And we have SROs at their secondary sites that have traditionally transported our confidence. I guess this would be in the event that we couldn't get a police officer to take it.
We have to have locks.
We'll have a lockbox to go. But like I said, we have a great relationship with our SROs that'll be able to accommodate most of that. The other thing to add, I want to point out, is in the past policy, we were never allowed to ask students to remove their shoes if we had a reasonable suspicion. This policy in the law gives us the right to ask them to remove their shoes now in search. So that was an additional change in the school law.
All right, transportation policy. The update to this is, in a way, with the open transfer, students living outside the district, this has an updated version or verbiage to it that says may provide transportation to students living outside the boundaries in around established district school facilities.
Historically, you've never been able to transfer, pick up students out of your school district. So the new law has allowed for districts to be able to do that. So if we got new car kids, we can go pick them up.
If we wanted to.
If we wanted
So
to.
we don't have to.
We don't have to. It's an option on the board, but there's a policy that.
Okay. This is, again, just like the child abuse, the update to the policy, first year of employment, and then once every 5 academic years. But this is concerned with student bullying.
Is this one that'll also be given every year?
Yes, I think it's
Anytime you see
important.
that, we should just think every year.
It's important to keep up on best practices.
Yes. This one's out of order too, Rob. Just so you know. You're gonna have to go-
Okay, this one's new. It's a whole new policy.
It is.
It is. Tribal regalia, and it is based on new law. Students enrolled, this is the policy itself. Students enrolled in Ponca City Public School District are permitted to wear tribal regalia during the school's official graduation ceremonies, whether held at a public or private location. Tribal regalia is defined as traditional garments, jewelry, other adornments such as an eagle feather, an eagle plume, a beaded cap, a stole, or similar objects of cultural or religious significance worn by members of a federally recognized Indian tribe or tribe of another country. Tribal regalia does not include any firearm or other weapon. Tribal regalia does not include any object that is otherwise prohibited by federal law except in compliance with an appropriate federal permits.
Questions for Justin on that one? Thank you.
This is a revision to our existing policy on immunizations. It's also set by the state. No child may be admitted to attend unless the parent or guardian provides either a current up-to-date immunization record with the required immunizations by the state, or a completed and signed state-approved exemption form. For that form, they do fill it out, submit it to the school district, and our school nurses then submit that to the state. And the state is the one who approves or denies the exemption. And the requirements must be posted on the district's website, and any notice or publication provided regarding immunizations. This is already a current practice. It's aligned with current state statute. We have an existing head lice policy. This is being revisited on behalf of our school nurses. That has brought some discussion up on this. That the school district will allow a child with head lice to attend classes in accordance with guidelines set by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the National Association of School Nurses. Both of those organizations, also aligned with CDC recommendations, are based on educational practices, support practices for parents, getting them necessary resources that they need versus excluding children from school, which could be counterproductive to their education.
Is that bullet item what you all recommended?
Yes.
Because it said there was that you were requesting a new policy. That is the new policy?
Yes.
So if you got lice, you can come to class, as long as you meet those guidelines. You can't send somebody home with head lice.
Right. That's very consistent with what other Oklahoma schools do across the state.
Okay.
Our current policy is unenforceable.
Current policy is read as they may be. It's not a required either way. There's a lot of steps in it. And actually, our current policy has not been updated since, I believe it's 2003. And a lot of the guidance from the Academy of Pediatrics, School Nurses Association, CDC have been revised. I know one of them today I read was as recently as 2020, but many times since ours was first developed.
So if one kid comes to class with head lice, he's probably going to give it to the whole class.
Well, there's guidelines in those recommendations that there's varying levels of, I guess.
Do we need to put those guidelines in the
infestation.
policy? Or just-
We have some handouts from both of those places that we'll upload to our website if they're not there already.
Our current policy, before this revised one before the board, had a lot of gray areas that left a a lot of confusion between parents and administrators and teachers. So we feel like this would help clarify that, get us in line with best practices.
So the website will list some of these guidelines.
Yeah, and our regional accreditation officer from the State Department of Education recommended this Enid Public Schools to look at as a good framework of what they've used, and this is very similar to what Enid has.
This is a revision to our medication administration policy. There's several, actually I think the next slide is also some more of these. Several portions of this are optional. So this top section is regarding district-wide use of epinephrine. About halfway down, then that's another section for district-wide use of inhalers. Both of those are essentially allowing the superintendent to obtain a prescription in the name of the school to provide 2 injectors, 2 inhalers at each site to be used in an emergency situation in which a student may need this due to a reaction that they are having on site. So it's an emergency response only. They can only be administered if the parent or guardian has given written consent and waived liability to good faith use of that for both the injector and the inhalers. Those are both optional. And both of these also, I got with our nurses on this, reached out to the Oklahoma State Department of Ed and Department of Health, and they have shared some resources where we can obtain, I believe, the epinephrine inhalers for little to no cost to our district, and we have those stocked.
Who can administer these?
We would.
Only the nurses can be required to, if we were to opt into these, but anyone who's had medication administration training could provide those if properly trained.
So if the teachers have been trained, they can provide it, otherwise they have to wait for a nurse?
Yes, typically it's our office personnel who's completed the medication administration training.
Or whoever's been trained.
Often secretaries, sometimes principals.
It's whoever's been trained, okay.
Correct.
But you don't want to have to wait 20 minutes for a nurse to show up.
Another optional piece is the district-wide use of glucagon. So this would be, again, the parent or guardian would have to be aware of this, inform in writing any parent of a student that has a diabetes medical management plan, that a school nurse or other appropriately trained personnel may administer this. And oftentimes our students with severe diabetes often have this on hand, but they would be able to administer this in the event it's not on site or it's expired and there was an emergency situation in which this would need to be administered. Of course, anytime this would be, 911 would still be required to be called in the event of an emergency. The one piece on here that is required, I believe it was optional in the past, which we did opt in at that time, so this is already in place. There's some verbiage that changed, the terminology and definition for administration of emergency opioid antagonist by district personnel. And this just defines a drug including but not limited to naloxone, which commonly is known as Narcan. I think the brand name, that's actually our current policy references that could be used. Our nurses carry this. I believe our SROs also carry this. That part is a required piece. It's just updating terminology.
Again, as long as you've been trained, you can administer that? Or can anybody, because I don't think that's a prescription drug.
Right, and that actually is not held at the sites. I believe our nurses carry that with them.
But do we have that at all the schools?
It is not housed at all the schools.
Should we?
We can work with.
With fentanyl being the problem that it is.
The president of Northwestern is working on a grant that he's asked upon city public schools would be interested if they were able to procure that and bring some training in these medicines to stick at our schools. But we were going to talk about that in committee if that's something the district would want to consider.
Okay. The other question I have, in the past, you have not been able to get a prescription for these prescription drugs in each school, or so, and that's the change that we're asking for.
Yeah, that's a new change in state law that, I guess I can obtain a prescription for that for emergency times, so.
Don't become a druggie on us.
Taking my inhaler around.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, here we go.
Okay, again, as background knowledge to this board, every year we have new legislation that's updated and drafted. And our attorneys that this district hires, RFR, who represents a number of school districts across Oklahoma, put together a policy pack and bring to the boards for boards to consider and adopt to make sure that you're in compliance with state accreditation and Oklahoma state statutes. One of the ones is that we're going to talk here is on transgender and non-binary student records. This was an optional policy that was presented to this board last year and was chose not to pursue it. We sought clarification from RFR and our regional accreditation officer if that was the same as this year. And it's my duty as superintendent to inform you as the board that this is from RFR, that when Lori stated these questions, that as Oklahoma Secondary, or the Oklahoma State School Board Association has stated, these newly adopted rules are mandatory and if not followed, may result in penalties for the school district. It appears Ponca City's not adopted the firm's transgender individuals and transgender non-binary student record policies. So we're going to have to catch up a little bit, and that's what some of this is catching up on some of the optional policies from last year and bringing us up to date with current accreditation standards from the State Department of Education. Okay? Any questions?
Question.
Yes, sir.
Is it law that we have to adopt this, or can we vote no again? And not make it optional?
I mean, you can do whatever you want as an elected board. You are the ones in the seat casting that vote.
Is it law? Is it
This will impact, as your attorney advised, this could have serious penalties for the district.
But is it law?
Robin, I'm not sure of what policy number it is in our policy, but it does say that whether, if we choose not to adopt a policy, the state law or the federal law takes precedent.
The state law takes precedent?
Or that whatever the.
So I might be able to answer your question by explaining this a little bit more.
Okay.
So the Oklahoma Parents Bill of Rights that was adopted, it was a movement to make sure, to ensure that parents were a very critical component of their child's education. I think that's something that when parents in the school district are working alongside together, that was the ideal situation for the greatest success and greatest overall impact on a child. So where that comes into is now we've got some gray areas and some social issues that are starting to pervade into the school district. The one of them being pronouns and whether or not that district employees can disclose information to their parents about their gender identity or how they want to be represented in the school district. A little background on this. During the Obama administration, it was a policy, federal guidelines, that district employees, if provided information, were not to out a student, if you will. If a student disclosed to you in private that they were going through this, that we as district employees, and they felt unsafe at home to tell their mom and dad, that as district, we were not allowed, and that was based off federal guidelines. State law has caught up, and state law trumps federal law. I mean, state law is what we're bound to. That's how we're run. So this new policy would require that if an employee is made aware of anything regarding the student's health, social, mental, psychological development, that we have 30 days to inform the parents of that change in the students. I think best practice is that schools and families work together hand in hand, and that there's a lot of trust there, and that all works out fine and good. I'm sure we can all think of instances, though, where that could be run amok. But again, these are policies recommended by people smarter than me, your legal teams that will defend the district, that you need to consider as a Board of Education if this is what you want to adopt here. A minor student has the right to be addressed by names, pronouns, and other terms that correspond with their gender identity, provided that the parent or guardian has provided written consent to this district. Again, if a parent and a student come into the district and say that they're going through this process, or it's very difficult to say, that we have an obligation to comply. Yes, correct. So We have to, there's a reasonable expectation to respect students' names and pronouns. Again, if it's alongside with parental consent. So if a student comes in one day and says they're doing this and then they change the next day, that schools and families should be working hand in hand to make sure that we've got an appropriate plan. Our practice has always been to try to work with the family and the students to make certain that we're best supporting each student. New. This is all brand new stuff that we're gonna have. Now, last year, it was presented to this board, but we chose to forego it because it was optional. Again, though, if we don't adopt it now, from your attorney, that there could be serious penalties to the school district. I don't know what those penalties would be. Does not sound like something I would want to do or be a part of. Again, most of this policy is setting up a lot of definitions, and they want to make sure that it's clear that this is not to impose labels, but rather to assist in understanding this policy and the obligations of district personnel. So if we were to adopt this policy, we would have to have some practices as a school district on how we would implement this and make sure that we're doing it all above board. Again, I provided RFR and OSSBA guidance. These new adopted rules are mandatory. I kind of highlighted that again just to make sure I've got that in writing there for you. And that we have to remain legal in accordance. I mean, we have an obligation to make sure that we're above board in all state and federal laws. So we basically, the transgender policy is basically making sure that parents are always informed of any social, emotional, physical changes of their child at school. And that we as an obligation as the district to make sure those parents are informed. If we don't comply with that, or if let's say we are made aware of a situation where a district personnel had not complied with that situation, this policy would put in writing that we are to submit a written summary write-up and submit that to the State Board of Education. Again, that's based off of Oklahoma State Department of Education rules, that if we were not in compliance with this policy, that they are made aware of it within 30 days. So I understand that this could be a touchy subject in our community, and our intent as a school district is to make sure to educate and nurture all of our children, and by following all Oklahoma laws, federal laws, and Oklahoma State Department of Education requirements that are related to our accreditation that is coming up in October 6th. We will have our site visit then. So that is why we're bringing these policies to you tonight to review and consider. If you have questions, that we can discuss them now and hopefully get these adopted. Yes, Anna?
It does mention here in the policy, the proposed policy.
Yes.
That the training would be included in our already related non-discrimination, bullying, et cetera, for employees and students.
Yes.
So I'm hearing that that's really just going to be already added, so that's probably not a cost.
Very good question. So a lot of the teeth in this, or instances would follow under our bullying or our discrimination clauses that this board has adopted and passed in years past. So that would be referred to our Title IX director or our bullying coordinator, which happens to be the same person, and Jason Levitt. So there wouldn't have to be any staffing changes. There would just have to be a lot of education, and a lot of these practices, believe it or not, we have students that have undergone this and are living this life right now. And I think we do a pretty dang good job of trying to get them educated, help them feel included, and move them through our education system and see great success each and every day. So,
Okay,
yeah.
my concern has to do, a lot of what you're talking about is fine. I don't have a problem with the rules and the regulations and the reporting, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
But the use of name, noun, pronouns, or gender. So what happens if a teacher slips up, makes a mistake, and calls somebody a he, a she, or a she, a he?
That's not in the spirit of the policy, I don't believe. I'm sorry.
That's what?
I don't believe that's in the spirit of the policy. I think that.
No, that says it in the policy.
I think that it's misusing the spirit of the policy and saying that somebody, if a teacher is.
Well, the question is, what's the punishment on the teacher? Because
So,
it says they will be punished.
So that's a great question. I think that it would have to be investigated by administration to determine if that was an honest mistake. I think I may be oversimplifying this, but I had a teacher that got married my senior year who changed her last name in the middle of the school year, and I slipped up every time and called her the wrong name. Was it out of a spirit of disrespect? I don't think so. It wasn't a mistake. Was there an acknowledgement on my part that I made a mistake and I was willing to change and be heard? I think that there's got to be some reasonableness to it. So I would task our administrators to investigate any alleged misuse. I would think that would fall under bullying and harassment if it was a continued disregard to the parents' wishes for their child in our school building. I mean, I think the spirit of this policy is that the parents' wishes are honored for their child. And I think any of us that are parents in here would want our school officials to honor what we're trying to
That's what
enforce.
the policy says. I agree with you totally. The reasonableness should be considered.
Right.
There's no
right.
question about that.
Yeah, and so I think the policy is purposefully vague in a lot of areas because we're kind of dealing with vague rules from the State Department of Education that we have to have this and provide this, or we get dinged on our accreditation or face serious consequences. I don't know what those are. Again, I think that we as a district have to oblige with what our attorneys recommend for compliance with state law. Yeah, Judy.
What if a student accidentally called them wrong and not realize?
Again, I think that's something that would have to be investigated. As administrators, we're tasked with this. We get a lot of times allegations of inappropriateness or bullying or harassment or mental health crises. What other policies have we talked about? Drug trafficking. That is what we do as administrators day in and day out, is we are here to try to make sure that each of these kids gets the best education possible. So we sometimes have to look into that to see, is there intent there? Was there ill will there? Is it a pattern? Is it extensive? And then be able to apply policy and our student code of conduct. Or if it was, like to Robin's question, a teacher or a staff person that was harassing a child, I hope we don't have any of those people employed in our school district. But we would apply the personnel handbook. I mean, it would be an HR thing at that point.
But I'm not sure that's what the policy says. That's the problem.
I think that it's meant to be interpreted in a way that it could capture any incident. My follow-up question, Adam, has to do with, it does mention if a transition, regardless of the timing of the transition, an STP or a school transition plan would be developed. Are there any related costs to that?
There are no school related costs to that because we already have those in place through our district therapists, our counselors. Like I said, this is policy that's catching up to practice, and it's really as a protection for our employees as well as ensuring that parents' rights are respected and their wishes are respected. I think that was the spirit of the law when I talked to our elected officials on the Parent Bill of Rights, that they have final say in what their kid or their child is doing and how they're being referred to at the school.
Okay, that was my question about the cost. Does anybody else have any other questions or discussion for Adam?
I just have a simple question.
Yeah, Nancy?
When there is, okay, so your child goes and says they're transgender or whatever it is, and we have 30 days to tell the parents, correct?
Correct.
How is that going to be dealt with? Is it a conference, is it a call, is it a letter, or do we not know yet?
Well, in best practices, what we've typically done is, like I said, the schools and the families work as a single unit. And typically a student going through something like that may have other concerns or issues, but what normally happens is either our counseling staff, our local site-based administrators get together with parents and have a conference out of privacy and respect to make sure that everyone understands what's happening and what we can do as a school district to help make them feel comfortable in the school day, what educational options we can provide. Some students may choose to go virtual, or some students may choose to, we have different plans for bathroom use and extracurriculars. And I mean, we have a lot of well-established practices. This policy will help us make sure that we're consistent with accreditation.
Any other questions or discussion for Adam on this report or policy? Okay, Adam, capacity limit changes is your next one.
Can I do my superintendent's report and capacity at the same time?
Yes.
Would that be all right?
Yeah, that's all right. I guess I wasn't even thinking that we hadn't done it.
I know, it's been such a fun-filled evening. I mean, Jason Levitt comes in and brings us some good news from the city. I don't think I've ever been applauded in a board meeting yet. Pretty impressive, pretty impressive. Hey, September highlights. Believe it or not, there's 2 great things that are happening on September 11th besides the horrible tragedy that happened in 2001. But today is my 100th day as the school superintendent, so thank you for that. I'm not going to name which board member that said I wasn't going to make 30 days, but I beat that pace. Beat it by a few days, a few months. And it's our CFO's birthday today, Brenda Story. Happy birthday, Brenda. And it also coincides with her very last board meeting. How many board meetings has it been for you, Brenda? I know I asked you this on Monday.
36 years ago. Wow.
And some of those you had 2 a month.
And when I first started, we had 2.
Wow. I don't like yelling at me with twice a month. So. I can't imagine 2 board meetings. But hey, after this meeting, we do have cake to celebrate Brenda's birthday, and everyone's welcome to have a slice if they'd like to. I thought it was a fun fact. I looked up what was my very first email on my very first day as superintendent. That came from Lori Graham, telling me what her contracts were for coming for the June board meeting. So Lori's done an exceptional job. If you don't know, Lori came over with me from operations to the superintendent side. I'm very thankful for this board's decision to do that and let that happen. Some highlights for the last 100 days. I thought staffing this year was, I mean, I can't speak highly enough of this district and the work that our principals have done, what our HR department has done. We had 64 new teachers brought in, and that doesn't even count a new athletic director, a new director of operations, a new principal at Liberty, a new assistant principal at the high school. So I just think a fantastic job on their part. Really exciting. I feel like I'm a recruiter for a college team. We got into the state of California. We were able to pull 3 teachers out of California for this year's recruiting class. 3 from the state of Kansas, 4 from Stillwater. We've had teachers from Moore, Duncan, 3 from Weatherford. Was it 4? 3 from Weatherford. And just a great reach across the state to come and work in our district. So I think it's a testament of our reach. I'm going to say it's our reach. It's the superintendent's influence that's making that happen. So you guys can read between the lines on that deal. But hey, one of the things that we're doing now is we've got our team in place is what I've been working on is just what are the new expectations for this district. You guys have heard about this the last few months. Our 3 themes this year is attendance, behaviors, and culture. I think the real easy part is setting the expectations. Where the rubber meets the road is tracking all that and following up with the individuals that are putting that into place. And we'll see how that progresses throughout the year. I'm excited about this month, and I'll tell you a little bit more on what we're going to do the first few steps here to improve that. Other big things, this board was instrumental in the biggest pay raises the state of Oklahoma has ever put forward for certified employees. You guys answered that bell and then also stepped up and made sure our support employees were taken care of as well. That's 2 years in a row. Our support employees got a $1 more hour raise. So thank you for that. I think that's been instrumental in 1, helping us retain staff, and in 2, recruit new employees that come to help us either serve students in our lunchrooms, drive our buses, or assist in other ways. The B theme, behavior, one of the other bells you guys answered was helping us secure a full-time counselor at every site, which I think, I talked to Shelley, that was something that she always had a goal and never was able to accomplish because of the teacher shortage. And Jennifer and her team did an outstanding job of making sure that we had full-time counselors across the district. Thank you, Kara. I'm ready for that. You can play that louder.
Sorry.
Now, I do want to put an asterisk by counselors because one of them will not be starting until Christmas. So, And we're interviewing for another one tomorrow, so we're excited about that. The other things, I mean, this board has assisted on is increasing what we're doing for special services. We're going from a 5% stipend to a 15% stipend. I've talked to a lot of colleagues across the state, and we are in pretty good shape when it comes to what services we're providing in special services as compared to other districts and shortages there. We also, if you don't notice, we have a few construction projects that happened over the summer and are still happening, unfortunately, but we're doing our darndest to get them going. That includes baseball, softball, Anderson, Liberty office remodel, Howe bathrooms, second phase. Lord have mercy, I know I'd forget them if I didn't write them all down. What else did we do? We did a lot, Jason. What else did you do? Fire alarms at the high school.
Anderson STEM.
And the Anderson STEM. I didn't say that. And the concert hall classrooms. There we go. So just a few projects right there. I remember talking when I was in Jason's seat. This summer was the biggest summer of construction improvement this district has had, maybe since the 1950s, when you guys were adding Liberty and Washington and Union and Trout. Not Union, Woodlands and Trout as new elementary schools across the district. September key events, we've got, the reporting season is near and it's actually going on right now. Our district accreditation, like I stated, is on October 6th. We have plans this month to start meeting with each site and reviewing data from our principals. Obviously, we've got a major transition coming up in our finance department when Brenda retires and Erica takes over the reins there. Our pie meeting, it's not what you think it is, because I was really excited. I thought it was going to be a pecan pie, but it's really Partners in Education with the Chamber of Commerce. They do this each year. This connects our business community with our education community. Fantastic, fantastic partnership that we experienced through the Chamber of Commerce. And I think Shelley's got some great ideas to revamp it and maybe improve some of the outcomes we're seeing there. But that kickoff meeting is next Thursday after school, 4 o'clock in this building. And we'll have our principals meeting with business representatives. Each of our schools has about 3 different pie partners and 3 different businesses. And that doesn't just include Ponca City Public Schools, but we make efforts to invite all of our private schools, McCord, even Kildare is invited to attend. And the Chamber works hard to make sure that our business community is partnered with each of our educational facilities. And we just can't do it in a vacuum. We're tasked with more and more, it seems like, day in and day out, and our business community really step up to help us feed teachers on parent-teacher conference night, offer Santa treats for Christmas, you name it, our business community does it. Donates water. We've had some business members donate asphalt for tracks, so they're phenomenal partnerships.
I think some of them send volunteers to serve.
Yeah, it's a great deal. So we want to continue that. That'll be a big deal for us on the 14th. Our professional development day is next Monday, much to my wife's chagrin. So the kids, I'm sorry, are going to be home while our staff works on development, and I've got to find a babysitter because I'll be at work, and she works too. So I understand that's an inconvenience for parents, but we do have PD days that are very important for our staff development. A number of our elementary principals have had some fantastic ideas for PD, and I apologize, I haven't seen the secondary ideas yet, but I'm really excited about this year's professional development. I think Tina Fisher has taken hers to Enid to do some site visits and look at some best practices there. I think there's just a lot of power in getting our people out of the district to look at other schools, pick brains of what works up there, and bring best practices back to our community. If you're a homecoming football fan, that's next week. Deer Creek comes to town, and we hope for a great crowd and a clean facility, and the speakers all working, and a wonderful evening to showcase all of our high school students that have put in so much each and every fall to lay it out on the field on Friday night. And the next bullet is directly related to homecoming because our indoor facility construction will start that Monday after homecoming. And Christy's going to have her work cut out because that will shut down the Brookfield to Comanche and 5th and 7th Street. It will go under active construction, so we'll see construction fencing going. And as a community service, just want to make sure people know that we have a number of people that have utilized those city blocks to park on. Those will not be accessible after homecoming. And it will probably be that way for at least 12 months if I have my way. just I wanted to make sure that everyone is very well aware of that. Hey, capacity numbers, this is gonna be, there's really no changes here. Maureen updated these as of 9/7. You can see there what our capacity numbers are for pre-K through 12 and our virtual schools there. We're recommending no changes from the board, but we will update those monthly as required by our state Department of Education accreditation standards. We started the school year with about 70 more students than we did this time last year, so I'm excited about the start of school. And one of the things, and I told this to Anna, and this may be a bad idea, but I'm going to go out on a limb and try it, is just ask the board questions about registration and just get your feedback if you've heard any feedback on how our registration went. Robin's already shared all of his at length several times by text or phone. But I'd be happy to also talk about it here. One of the things I've said as a new superintendent is I wanted to evaluate everything that's first year, not make sweeping changes, but just take a look at it through a lens of what can we do to improve, how can we get better at it. One of the things right now with registration, I would credit Terry and her team, with almost 4,700 students, I think I had 10 maybe parents that were upset with the process and came to visit with me as a superintendent. So I think keeping that in my mindset, that something must be doing okay to get 4,700 kids enrolled. But I know, just even as superintendent, we've caught a few things as well as, if our overflow, we have some population trends that I'd really like to explore over the last 3 to 5 years. Where are our kids really residing at in our community? Are they really, are there pockets more in the east of the community, on the south? I think that would be important for this board to look at, and especially as we have administration on how we're staffing teachers and what sections we have available for kids. We have full classes in several of our elementary sites, and overflow has kept all of our buildings open and moving, but I just think we need to be mindful of where our population is moving in our community and how what kind of implications that may have on our district. But one of the things too, I talked to our principals about, and one of the complaints I had from parents and just talking in my conversation, seems like we're just kind of all over the place with school supplies. I don't know if you guys have heard that a little bit, maybe. And I think what we've challenged our directors on is how can we find a way to standardize school supply list or even make school supplies a thing of the past and figure out a way that as a district we step up and make sure that you send us your kids, we'll make sure they have the stuff that they need to learn in the classroom. But that's going to take a lot of coordination between our principals and our district staff. But I think they're up for it. I think it'd be a good thing for this community if we didn't have to have, one school requires 4 boxes of Kleenex and this school only requires 5 reams of copy paper. I think we can do some coordination and bring that in line. But I wanted, do you guys have any feedback on that, or Robin, any feedback from you on that?
On the registration part of things, I'm not sure if this is part of registration, but course selection, the spring before, I've had 3 graduate, and then I have 2 in high school right now. So I've gone through that process a few times where they have to pick their courses.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as a parent, I haven't been, not as involved as I would think or hear from,
Well, I may have heard from a parent or two about course selection and schedules at the high school. And one of the things that our secondary director has worked on is taking a step back and kind of looked at where is the disconnect happening. So we do pre-registration in the spring, and this should, in theory, and you should have all that kind of sorted out over the summer. And when students come to pick up their schedule in August after registration, be placed in the appropriate classes. Unfortunately, we were made aware of instances where that expectation was not met. So Dr. Hawkins has been meeting with our counseling corps and once a week to discuss plans on and give them training to help them be better prepared in the future, if you will, and see what things we can do as a district to better support them to ensure that our parents and kids have a seamless transition. It should be easy. I have a high school junior too, and I want that to work out really well. We'll have a high school freshman next year. So if we're going to go through that process of making sure to do the pre-registration, which I think is a very important thing for us as a district to be able to plan and allocate resources, have an idea of how to plan and allocate resources for the upcoming school year, that we uphold our end of the bargain to make sure that if they register for those classes, they get put in those classes.
Well, to be fair, I have a junior also, his schedule was messed up the first day, but the counselors were like, had a fixed like from that. Like,
Yeah, and hopefully that was the case for most of them. I think, some of that can also be a little customer service training, and sometimes we do some corrections and maybe not, we drop the ball and follow through and say, hey, this was changed, or we over rely on software to send a notification to a parent who doesn't have notifications turned onto their phone, so they don't get or an incorrect email. So we just need to have that personal touch, and I think that comes with some customer service training. And because we're here to serve the community. That's what we're here for. And I can understand that in today's climate too, how competitive scholarships are and class ranking, and parents that really want and desire for their kids to excel and achieve. We love that, want to do that. So we've got to step up, and how do we help that? Best help do that. Dr. Hawkins has done a great job. Like I said, how many times have you met with them so far this year, Dr. Hawkins? 3 times with the counselors?
Yeah.
She had to put down a crayon while she was talking. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Yeah, 3 times so far this year, and we've only been in school 3 weeks. So I think that's just a testament to that. When we hear that feedback, we're going to respond to it and see what we can do to improve. Because I will promise you, we're not a perfect school district. We will make mistakes, but we will have an attitude of how can we improve and get better. And I think that if we stick to that practice, we'll do really well.
Were you mentioning that about the school supplies for like elementary? You want to get them more uniform?
Yeah, I want to get them more uniform, and I mean, in my dream scenario, if it's possible, and this will be up to our new CFO to figure this out, is how do we either increase instructional budgets or tell the principals that this is what we think an elementary school child or middle school child or high school student needs to be successful in our buildings each year, and have all of that provided by the district.
Oh, have it provided. It's kind of, in a way, I think it's kind of hard because individual teachers want individual things.
Yeah.
They have their programs, they have their things that have been successful for them, and to say, oh, well, we're going to all get the same amount of stuff, that might not. And where one person might put something like map pencils on there, another teacher might not want that, And,
right. So that's what we thought.
That's taken away from the individual teacher.
That's where we thought we'd empower the principals to work with their own buildings, and if we increase their instructional budgets, if funds allowed, that those principals could work with our local vendors and the teachers. So if Mrs. Troop wanted map pencils, that Jody Fincher would make sure you got a set of map pencils for your classroom or crayons in there. But I think you're exactly right. There may be a teacher that has a really cool world geography project that would require map pencils to complete, but this teacher has a really cool reading project that wants, I don't know, some free reminder. So it may be a little more work on the principal's part, but I think we have some dynamic suppliers in town, whether that's Redlands or Merrifields or Galaxy or whatever, that would be very happy to work. Just tell us what you want, and that they would make that happen for the principals. Now, I think it'd be a goal of ours in this climate of increasing enrollment that is there a possibility we can make that happen? Now, I will speak selfishly as a parent of 3 kids at PCPS and soon to have 4 in there. When I was shopping for 3 different sites, it's a little frustrating.
Yeah.
It's a little frustrating. Like, why does this school get a longer list or have a shorter list? And I think we can do a better job as administrators on cleaning that up a little bit.
And I think, like the copy paper, maybe the district could buy that so that wouldn't have to be on the sheet.
I love that idea, Judy. That would be great. I think.
Or some things like that,
No, if there's a personalized thing, we'd have to talk about it as a board, like earbuds. Do we want to provide everyone their own earbuds, or they should? We just need to. Some of that stuff we'll just have to discuss.
That's kind of extreme, I think.
Yeah.
So why do you need earbuds?
Well, we do a lot of stuff on software computers.
be a good idea to add, I don't know when the parent surveys go out, maybe you add a survey of would they be willing to send, I mean, I'm not saying, if we can't afford it as a district, you know, you're fine with Skydream of having it where we can pay for it. Would they consider paying a fee of some sort that would cover supplies rather than, you know, just to find out, like an assessment, to find out
Okay.
the community.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea either. This is a good discussion, I love
Yeah,
this.
well, online was, if we're talking registration, keeping it open longer. So that was my.
Like longer in the evening or like a longer period of time, like instead of July opening it in June?
Both ways.
Okay.
And another thing also is, yeah, we do need to bust up our customer service, but as a parent, it's my responsibility to know what's going on with my kid as well. So because the responsibility is not just all on us or the school, you know what I mean? So that's another thing, so.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and that sometimes we run into that, you know, why didn't you do this? We're not mind readers, and we do have 1,500 kids and board counselors, and, you know, is that an administrative thing? Do we need to staff more counselors? But, yeah, sometimes we run into that. That's good. Thank you for sharing that, Nancy.
I've given you, already given you mine, but I'll give them again just so everybody can hear them. Your counselors or your people, particularly at the high school, that set the schedules, they need to become more than 10-month employees. You need to start them earlier because there is no reason to be scheduled for Spanish 2 before you've ever had Spanish 1, and then the student has to wait till school starts to make that change. That's just not acceptable.
Can I have the minutes reflect that Robin wants to increase staffing?
Well, I mean, if that's what you gotta do, that's what you gotta do. Start them earlier.
I agree.
And
That's
then
great.
they can correct those errors. And there's gonna be errors. I mean, nobody's questioning that.
We have 15 days currently, but we may have that more.
Maybe you need more.
We may have
If
to.
they can't do
I
it.
just want to be careful that.
We've had a lot of turnover in that area, so we also have to look at that as well.
Yeah, so it's like a multitude. The teacher shortage has done us no favors, and that's impacted counselors as well. Like I said, we are excited to have full-time counselors in every site, but with that comes, now we're excited that we have to provide additional training and support to make sure that people are effective.
And our kids need to take advantage and go see the problem.
Yep. But those are all, that is the feedback that it sounds like you guys are hearing and feeling, and I think the administration's echoing that, and like I said, Dr. Hawkins at the secondary level is really taking that on. Because scheduling is more of a secondary issue. In elementary, you don't really get to pick your classes because it's all a set curriculum.
I'll tell you what though, I'm old, my kid started a long time ago when we used to have to go all to the site and then I'll sit in the gym or whatever, fill out all the forms. It's so nice doing our school. I like doing it.
Yeah, that's great. We've got plans to make Power School even more robust and easier for the parents to access, utilize.
Yeah, it's really easy. It's intuitive too. It's not hard to understand.
And so that kind of speaks to my next point, Anna, is how are we capturing accurate student counts as a district? This month we've been, Eric and I have been sitting in on weekly meetings on OSSBA and school finance as we kind of gear up on educating our own selves in our new roles. And one of the things they talked about last Tuesday was accurately capturing your student counts. And we had a long discussion about that today in Superintendent's Cabinet on we have a grace period of 30 days before students fall off of our free and reduced count. And we'll talk about this at length in Ad Council tomorrow, is how do we make sure that we're capturing those students that qualify for free and reduced lunch. One, I think that takes a stress off of the kid that doesn't have to worry about, going through the lunch line and saying that you owe this amount of money, you owe this amount of money, and then that kind of conflict that arises between parents and students. For whatever reason, we have a number of parents that just refuse to fill it out or complete it. And really their kids are the ones that pay the price. So we're going to talk about how we can help increase that, maybe start making some of that as personal contacts, maybe that customer service approach to capturing that data, because what happens is when we capture those accurate student counts, everyone in this district benefits when your student counts are accurate, all the way from the superintendents down to child nutrition and transportation. And every one of our elementary principals or secondary principals that get Title I funds would see an increase in their funding if we have accurate student counts. So it's our job and obligation as administrators to make sure that we're making that as easy as possible, but also, trying to make sure that those parents are getting those forms completed. And Power School is going to be one way that we're going to be able to do that. utilize that in some of the stuff that we're doing with our form report and form collection. So, thank you, that's a good discussion, that was awesome. The other thing we're talking about is, I don't know if you've seen the announcement from the state superintendent, that there was a recent announcement last week about the Teacher Empowerment Fund. This is a program to incentivize teachers, and it's basically the legislature's attempt at merit pay. It's a $22.5 million funded program. Talking to other superintendents across the state, there's not many that have any really concrete plans, and if you read some of the guidelines and implementation, it's very vague. In fact, they spell out specifically that they want to leave it to local control to determine which 10% of your faculty would qualify for merit pay. So we met and talked about that in executive session, executive cabinet, this morning, to see kind of what red flags we saw, what, maybe criteria we would need to bring to this board to review and discuss. But ultimately, whatever comes, if anything comes from this, would have to be approved by the Board of Education. And then our next step, and I've already reached out to Ms. Murray, is what's the ACT's feelings on this and how we do that. I certainly don't want to leave money on the table, but if you read the fine print, the district would have to provide half of any funds given to these teachers. So what way do we do that? What way do we incentivize teachers? How do we recognize teachers that are going above and beyond and doing what they need to? I'm fearful it could open a can of worms, but we're going to have those discussions and make sure that we all agree on something before we take a step forward on it. Estimate of needs review and comparison, that's coming up, or have we already done it? And it's on this agenda tonight. But Brenda tells me we do the new budget method anyway, so this is just more of an archaic way for us to stay in compliance with school law.
Do it for sinking.
Just for sinking fund, that's right. See, she's still teaching me. And day 100 and on her first day. OCAS revenue and expenditure corrections, that report is due on September 30th. They've already submitted that report at the first of the month, and if we have to make any corrections, we can do that by the end of the month. And then we've got previous year student counts. We're working on how do we capture accurate student counts, and we're comparing those with numbers from last year. Carla's already given the alternative education implementation plan, and Delanna's completed that report and submitted it, and the next one will be the Gifted and Talented Plan update and budget. So this is a month full of activities, and I'm no exception. I've got trainings, mandatory trainings for my new superintendency this Thursday, and every Tuesday at lunch for this month. So any questions, discussion? So on the capacity, there's really not any recommendation of changes. Looking at it, we don't need to entertain any motions unless you want to vote to keep it the same if you have to.
Moving on to item 5, consider and take action on board policy changes as proposed during the superintendent's report. Entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion, it may not be acceptable to others, but I would like to approve the entire book except eliminate the 2 paragraphs under the Transgender and Non-Binary Student Records Act section, and it is paragraphs, I'll tell you in just a second. One is names and pronouns. The other one is, I'll find it here.
Can you use the title of can you use the underlying title of the paragraph on the foundation?
It's transgender and non-binary student records.
Under student record?
The other one is, just a second, use of preferred name, pronoun, and gender. That section, those 2 paragraphs, and then the 2 paragraphs under transgender individual optional policies, names and pronouns. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, the first 4 paragraphs. Everything else, I didn't see a problem with.
Okay, so just make sure I understand your motion. Your motion is to approve the policies as written, except for, you'd like to remove the paragraph under student records, under the transgender, non-binary student records policy, you'd like to strike paragraph, sorry, tell me the paragraph again.
Under student records, it is, I've got so many notes on here. It's two paragraphs, under use of preferred name and
Okay.
pronoun or gender.
So it's not, okay, it's under the student record policy, but you want
So
to
the one
strike
in
the
black
section,
and then the one.
to strike
The one
strike the
black and
entire
one
section
blue,
of use of
under
preferred name and
transgender
pronoun
and
gender.
non-binary.
And then your same motion would also like to strike the paragraphs under
Names and
names and
pronouns.
pronouns, the 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs, but leave the paragraph that begins with official district records.
Yes, leave that one. Official district records must be maintained.
Okay, the motion on the table is to approve the policies except for the mentioned policies. Would anybody like to second that? Yeah, but, well, we can't discuss it until we have a, okay, we don't have to vote or anything, but we can make the motion to discuss these changes first, or,
I don't know without a second or not.
right.
I have a question.
Okay, I need a second before we. All right.
And it'll die.
Hearing none. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to, get back to my page. Consider and take action on the board policy changes as proposed during the superintendent's report.
I'll make the motion.
Nancy has made the motion. Is there a seconder? Seconder for the motion to consider and take action. Dawn seconded. Any discussion or questions before we move forward?
Well, what my question was on his was, okay,
We're not striking it, we're just to approve.
I know.
Okay.
So I think,
I think, I'm just saying.
I can't ask a question.
I think you can ask a question. I just-
Okay,
it's not-
my question is to Adam, this policy that's been written, this is what I was gonna ask, and maybe I can ask it then. If we make a change, you're telling us that this has all been, and this is all state law. Is that what you're telling us?
This is what RFR has written up based off of state law and accreditation.
Based off of, on that one part though that says optional, so is that part optional? Is that section optional?
I believe the way I understood it from the RFR's, this was an optional policy last year, but it's become mandatory now.
Okay.
But I'd be happy to ask again if you need to ask.
Well, I'm just asking because it said optional on there, so if you're telling me.
Well, and that's what, we asked, our regional accreditation officer, and he directed us to talk to our school attorneys, and that was their guidance, was that this was an optional policy last year, and this board did not choose to do it, but to be in accordance with Oklahoma Parents' Bill of Rights, that we would need to adopt it to avoid serious.
If we don't adopt it, we can face accreditation problems. What do you
Correct.
say?
Yeah.
We can't find it.
Penalties and fines is what I wrote
Yeah.
down, and you said that we
Yeah.
would face penalties.
Penalties and fines.
Any other questions before we call for the vote? All right, call for the vote.
Mr. Newsom. Mr. Riley.
Nay.
Mrs. Rowland.
Aye.
Mrs. Troop. Mrs. Zimmerstein.
Item 6, consideration and take action on capacity limit changes as proposed during the superintendent's report. Before I ask for a motion, point of clarification, did you say there are no changes to the capacity
No
limits?
changes.
Okay, so,
I didn't know if we would have to have changes.
Oh, okay.
Just approve them as is. Okay.
okay, so I'll entertain a motion to approve them as listed. Don's made the motion.
I'll second.
Seconded Judy. Any discussion or questions before? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Mr. Riley.
Aye.
Mrs. Rowland.
Aye.
Mrs. Troop.
Aye.
Mrs. Zimmerstein.
Aye.
Mr. Newsom.
Aye.
Our next is the consent agenda. A motion is required for the approval of the consent agenda as printed or as amended. The board members may, however, call for a separate vote on any or all items listed on the consent agenda. The commentary, we have 3 items: the minutes from our special board meeting on August 21st, contracts and agreements under $10,000, and out-of-state travel requests. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. And seconded by Judy. Any discussion or questions? Call for the vote.
Mrs. Rowland?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Mrs. Zimmershed? Aye. Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mr. Ryder?
Aye.
Item 8, action items with a motion required. Consider and take action on the following district financial reports, A through O, as listed in your agenda.
Had a good meeting.
Don's made a motion of support.
Second.
Seconded by Robbins. Any discussion or questions? Call for the vote.
Mrs. Troop? Mrs. Zimmershed? Aye. Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mrs. Rowland?
Aye. Item 2, consider and take action on appointment and bond authorization for treasurer, appointment of minutes clerk, and purchasing agent for the fiscal year 24. And the commentary is due to personnel changes, the positions of district treasurer, and these roles will be filled effective September 15th by Erica Johnson, and the superintendent approves this personnel change. Is there a motion?
I'll move to accept item 2.
Robin has support, and Robin has a second. Any discussion or questions? Call for the vote.
Mrs. Zimmershed? Aye. Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mrs. Rowland? Mrs. Troop?
Item 3, consider and take action on a motion approving the amendment to update authorized signers of the sublease agreement dated May 1st, 2022 between the district and Kay County Public Buildings Authority for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024, as required under the provisions of the agreement. It's the same reasons as the prior motion, or item.
Approved.
Approved by Dawn, motion of approval by Dawn. Second by Nancy. Any discussion or questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. Why is the RCB all board members and none of the others? Well, RCB, Community, and First National are not.
I believe that's on item 4.
We're on item 3.
We're on item 3.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Okay.
okay. Any other questions for 3? Call for the vote.
Mrs. Zimmershed? Aye. Mrs. Troop? Mrs. Rowland?
Aye.
Mr. Ryder?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
All right, item 4, consider and take action on the notification of and approval to update bank account authorized signers due to personnel changes. Commentary, RCB bank accounts excluding activity fund account have all board members with Erica Johnson and Lori Graham. RCB bank activity fund account, all board members Erica Johnson and Cindy Beck. Community National Bank accounts, Erica Johnson, Lori Graham. First National Bank of Oklahoma accounts, Erica Johnson, Lori Graham. And Equity Bank accounts, Erica Johnson and Lori Graham. And go ahead and have Brenda answer that question. if that's okay.
The RCP accounts are operating accounts where the accounts at First National Equity and Community are investment accounts, and we just hold money there to draw interest on it and then transfer it into our operating accounts.
Okay, next question, why wouldn't the superintendent be included in those?
Yeah, they're,
Huh?
They're not an
they're
authorized
not,
signer.
they're not.
They're not an authorized signer.
It keeps my hand out of the cookie jar.
It should be, it should be.
Well,
Hey, that's the question.
the clerk of the board and the treasurer are officers of the board, and then the board members, he's not a member of the board.
I'm an employee of the board.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for item 4.
I'll make a motion.
Judy has made a motion for support.
Second.
Second by Nancy. We put kind of up at the same time. And any other discussion or questions? Call for the vote.
Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Mrs. Rowland?
Aye.
Mr. Ryder?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mrs. Zimmershed? Aye.
Item 5, consider and take action on the estimate of needs for fiscal year 24. Motion of approval by
Second.
Dawn. Seconded by Robin. Any discussion or questions? Call for the vote.
Mrs. Rowland?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mrs. Zimmershed? Aye. Mrs. Troop?
Item 6, consider and take action on the gifted advisory committee.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Dawn.
I'll second.
Second by Nancy. Any discussion or questions? Call for the vote.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mrs. Zimmershed? Aye. Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Mrs. Rowland?
Aye. Item 7, consider and take action on change order number 1 from Kyler Construction Group for the Roosevelt Elementary re-roof project. This change order returns Ponca City Public Schools $13,705 of unused construction contingency funds, $31,386 of unused allowances, totals $45,091. This makes our final GMP for the Roosevelt Elementary re-roof project $451,391. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Judy's made the motion.
For number 7.
For item 7.
Second.
Okay, and Dawn seconded. Any discussion or questions? Call for the vote.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mrs. Zimmershed? Aye. Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Mrs. Rowland? Aye. Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Item 8, consider and take action on a ratification for the 2024 agreement with Aircraft Owners and Pilot Association, AOPA, grant for curriculum and reimbursement of materials for Aviation 1 and Aviation 2 courses at the high school. Don has moved for approval. Take a second.
Second.
Second by Judy. Any discussion or questions? Call for the vote.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mrs. Rowland? Aye. Mrs. Troop? Mrs. Zimmershed? Aye.
Item 9, consider and take action on the following contracts and agreements. We'll do these all in one, or should we do them separately? I'm going to read A through I, and then we'll make a vote for them all. Item A is consider and take action on hiring the following individuals as adjunct teachers as specified. Jeremy Denoya, physical education, health and safety. Josie Harrington for elementary education. B, rate quotes from Adams Plumbing for district-wide miscellaneous repairs. Total estimate cost is up to $20,000 from the building fund. Item C, ratification of an agreement with Cengage Learning for student books. This is a year 2 of a 6-year agreement. And then item D has some amended commentary that you guys have before you, so I'll be reading that if you have that sheet with you. Item D, proposal from Falcon Acoustic Design Group for audio improvements to the Robson Fieldhouse. This proposal is for the installation of 138 acoustic panels in the Robson Fieldhouse to improve sound and audio quality. The total is $56,850 from building fund, and Adam will answer questions. Item E, quote from GoMoodle for site licenses for SEL curriculum supervision software. Total cost is $15,992. Item F, ratification of an agreement with Huddle to provide video review. Payment is $20,000 annual and used paid by athletic funds. Item G, quote from Level Data for software to connect our existing systems. The total cost is $26,897.87, funded by Bond 33. H, rate quotes from Ward's Air Conditioning Incorporated for repairs to Mitsubishi HVAC units. The cost is up to $20,000 from the building fund. Item I is a proposal from Ward's Air Conditioning Incorporated to install heating and cooling unit for the concert hall storage room. The total cost is $15,145. I'll entertain a motion to consider items A through I.
I would like a separate vote on D, E, and an explanation on F. But I don't believe it is accurate, the way written.
Say that again.
Everything else, I'd make a motion that we approve, other than D, E, and F. Have a separate vote on those, please.
Okay, okay, so Robin's motion is to consider a vote for items A, B, C, G, H, and I. And seconded by Dawn.
Say that.
Full D, E, and F?
Yeah, D, E, and F is separate vote.
Correct. That's the motion on the table. Any discussion or questions before we make that consideration to this point? We'll make a vote to full vote, and then we'll vote on separately. Or do we just
No, you vote on the ones that you did.
Okay, so we're just gonna go ahead and, Dawn's made the motion, or seconded that we go ahead and consider the vote for A, B, C, G, H, and I. Call for the vote.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mrs. Rowland?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop? Aye. Mrs. Zimshin? Aye. Mr. Newsom?
Aye. And a motion to consider D, E, and F. We just need the motion to discuss it.
We can discuss them all or vote them separate, I don't care.
Well, did you say you had questions about F? So if we make the motion, then we can discuss it.
Yeah, I've got a question on F. I don't believe our payment is $20,000. I'd ask Jason to explain that one.
Okay,
Why wouldn't it be as what we approved last time?
it's this year 2 or year 3. Okay, go ahead, Jason.
So Huddle is a system that was brought to us last year when I was athletic director. A lot of our athletic programs had already been using this service, but now it has completely automated cameras that can record practices, pick up scoreboards, you can live stream on it, and then you get so many hours of data storage. And on top of that, you get analysts that break down the footage for coaches, staff, kids have access to their accounts. They can send it off to college recruiters. It's a very, very interesting system. So what we did with this program, it is $20,000 a year, but what we did is we got with Team Radio, we upped that contract with them to $6,500. From the athletic account, we covered $3,500 because we knew that this was something that could be for all of our programs and serve the majority of all of our kids, okay? The additional funds for that were divided up between programs. So football, for example, is paying $4,500 out of the Booster Club account. Now they're paying $1,500. So it really decreased the cost for a lot of our programs and limited a lot of fundraising.
So you're saying the payment instead of $20,000 out of the athletic fund is really only $3,500?
That's really the only payment that is coming out of the
That's what I
athletic
was talking
account.
about.
Yeah, because that's what we talked about last year.
Yeah, it's last year plus on steroids, it's better.
Yeah, right.
But we're not paying $20,000 out of that.
That's just total.
We're only paying $3,500. So I mean, we could go ahead and, Anna, if you wanted to, go ahead and vote on that one.
So the motion on the table by Robin is to consider item F. Do I have a second?
With that change.
What would you like to change to say? To just say that?
Well, it's still, we pay it.
No, there will be a $20,000 payment.
Yeah, we have to make
No,
that.
there won't be a $20,000 payment from us.
Yeah, it does.
It'll
Well,
be-
but we get reimbursed,
You're right.
but it's not costing us. We're not paying $20,000.
Well, I mean,
We're only paying $16,500.
no, not 30.
Or 35, I'm sorry.
Okay, so the motion on the table is to consider item F, a ratification of agreement with Huddle to provide video review. But you would like to amend it to say the commentary to state that we
Well,
could
the
pay up to
commentary has nothing to do
20,000.
with the vote.
Okay,
Commentary is just there.
okay, that you, okay. Motion made by Robin, seconded by Dawn. Was that right?
Yes.
And call for the vote.
Mrs. Rowland?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop? Aye. Mrs. Zimshin? Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mr. White?
Aye.
Do we have a motion to consider items D and E?
We want to put this together, but we're.
It's whatever, it's up to you guys.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Nancy has made a motion to consider items D and E.
Yeah, I'll second.
Judy has seconded that. Any discussion or questions about D or E? And
Yes.
that D did have some amended commentary. D, that one.
On D, we did.
Yeah, yeah. It's.
Sorry, I didn't make it there.
Because we're knocking out the 6 ceiling clouds and realignment of speakers. And it's bringing it down to 56,000.
Right.
How come we knocked those out?
Well, a couple of reasons. One, we thought 100,000 was a little rich, and we wanted to, we think recommendation is that the acoustic wall panels will have a significant improvement on the spectators' experience. And then thirdly, if we did sound clouds, we have to cover the floor and construct those in the building, and there's no time to do that.
Okay, so the motion on the table is to consider item D, the proposal from Falcon Acoustic Design, and E, a quote from Bo Diddle. Seconded by Judy. Made by Nancy. Robin, what was your question?
The other question on Go Noodle, the SEL curriculum, Super Noodle software, et cetera, it is a one-year contract, correct?
Yes, sir.
If we don't like it, we don't have to use it again the following year, correct?
That's correct.
We have no commitments to it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's the only question I have.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? Call for the vote.
Mrs. Troop? Aye. Mrs. Zimshin? Aye. Mr. Newsom? Aye. Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mrs. Rowland?
Aye. Okay, moving on to item 10. Oh, well, we're done with all of those. We're done with 9. Moving on to 10, a motion, well, to entertain a motion to vote and convene an executive session for the following purposes: to discuss the possible termination, reassignment, resignation, except for resignation and employment of personnel on the attached detailed personnel report, to discuss negotiations, and to discuss the purchase or appraisal of real property.
I'll make a motion.
Nancy's made a motion. Second by Judy. Call for the vote.
Mrs. Zimshin? Aye. Mr. Newsom? Aye. Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mrs. Rowland?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop?
So are we doing rest day take?
Decided by the board president that the minutes of the executive session were kept by the board minutes clerk and will remain confidential. Sorry, I forgot to say return to open session. Item 13, consider and take action on recommendations for termination, reassignment, resignation, and employment of personnel.
Motion approved.
Motion to approve by Don.
Second.
Second by Nancy. Any discussion or questions? Call for the vote.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mrs. Rowland?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Mrs. Zimshin?
Any new business tonight?
Happy birthday.
Thank you for everything.
And
Thank
I won't
you,
text you
Brenda.
for 90 days.
Motion is revised for
Or
adjournment.
60.
I really can't.
I'm still gonna send you.
Adjourn, adjourn.
6:30 in the morning too.